Good evening, Placerville. It's 5 o'clock, so we will bring this meeting to order. Please rise and join me in the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. All right, roll call, Regina.
Councilmember Borelli?
Here.
Councilmember No?
Here.
Councilmember Thomas will be noted as absent. Vice Mayor Zaragoza?
Here.
Mayor Taylor?
Here.
Thank you.
Thank you. Ceremonial matters, item 3. Under the agenda, we have none tonight, which brings us to the closed session report with our city attorney, and we had no closed session tonight. So that brings us to item 5, adoption of the agenda. I would request that we add under item 6 a brief report by Chief Cordero.
I'll second that.
We haven't made a motion yet. You just
Right.
No, that's right. I just moved it right ahead.
I'm just going to say.
I'll make a motion to adopt the agenda.
Now I will second that.
Can I make a note, if you can amend that, we want to pull item 7.6 from the agenda on the consent calendar,
Okay.
but we should do that as part of the adoption agenda
Okay,
this time.
so the amendment is to add 6.2, a brief report by Chief Cordera, and to pull
7.6.
7.6.
And I will second that.
All right. We have a first and a second. Can we get a roll call?
Councilmember Borelli?
Aye.
Councilmember No?
Aye.
Vice Mayor Zaragoza?
Aye.
Mayor Taylor?
Aye. Thank you, Regina. All right, that brings us to item 6, brief comments by the City Council. And let's start with Councilmember Jackie No.
Went to the Fire Safe Council event on Saturday. That was a really great event. I hope we can keep doing that. All sorts of good information, from fire safe on your property to emergency go kits, radio, the ham radio stuff you can get involved in to stay communicating. So look forward to that again next year.
Thank you. Michael.
Same. Attended the Fire Safe Council event on Saturday, which was great. Thank you, everybody that helped out, including the Rotary for being out there cooking hot dogs in the rain. Not a lot of rain, but still some rain. And with Councilmember Thomas, we had a meeting with George Radonovich, who is a former congressman, now running for state senate in this district now, the new state senate seat. So, thank you.
All right, thank you. Patty.
I met with Ron, what's his last name? Upper Room? Marlette at the Upper Room. Had a nice conversation with him and telling us about some of his ideas, and I think there's certainly to be considered. I was impressed with our conversation. And then, of course, the Fire Safe event, which I participated, and very happy with it, and I'll give some later reports on it.
All right, thank you, Patty. I also met with Ron Marlette, the executive director from the Upper Room, and discussed their expansion plans and possible relocation of that facility. It was a good conversation. I met with Mindy Danovara, the new director of philanthropy at Marshall Hospital, and I got a tour of their brand new kitchen and cafeteria, which is really state-of-the-art, awesome kitchen. It will be a great project to have up there. I attended the Wildfire Awareness event, and just really want to thank the Placerville Fire Safe Council, El Dorado Fire, Placerville PD, and all of the partner organizations that were there. It was a great turnout and a great event. My kids loved climbing in the fire trucks and enjoyed the hot dogs, and it was just nice to see everybody out for that. And I just want to make a little public service announcement that on April 30th is our Community Spring Clean. This is a really great event, and I encourage you to save the date on your calendar. It's a time that volunteers come together and work on a whole bunch of different projects within the city to clean up our parks and our trails and just really beautify our city for spring. And with that, that's all my comments for now. So let's invite Chief Cordero with El Dorado Fire to give us a brief update.
Thank you, Mayor Taylor, and good evening, Council. I just wanted to provide some update on the Wildfire Resiliency and Vegetation Management Working Group that was established through the county in September on the heels of the Caldor Fire. The County Board of Supervisors authorized the CAO in his office to put this group together. The group is a collaborative group of members from the CAO's office, as well as county staff, GIS personnel, U.S. Forest Service, CAL FIRE, and I have been a member of that group as the chair of the El Dorado County Fire Chiefs Association, representing that group, not our fire district individually. We've been meeting twice a month over various topics, really looking to develop a long-term strategy for vegetation management within the county. And we've identified some grant funding that's available to take on a large project to do not only defensible space, but fuel mitigation and some home hardening. The details of that are still being worked out, but the group made a presentation to the Board of Supervisors this morning. The grant that we're looking at is about a $10.3 million grant, but it requires about $3.3 million match from the county. So we were at that point of making that presentation, getting some commitment from the county to move forward. The group is looking at several focus areas throughout the county that we're rating and scoring on for the project. And one of the challenges with that is, I'm sure the council yourselves could come up with a list of areas in Placerville and beyond faster than I can write on areas in this county that need to be worked on. But we've narrowed it down to 7 areas, and I wanted to bring it to your attention because one of the areas that is under consideration would essentially be from just south of Placerville, from Sacramento Hill, moving east through Texas Hill. And depending on how the swath of that focus area ends up being, it may incorporate part of the city. But that's a good thing because it's defensible space work that's being done and fuels mitigation within the city. But in our after meeting and that discussion with this one in particular as a potential focus group we're looking at, I wanted to bring it to the city's attention that there is discussion that this area is up for consideration along with 6 other areas. But it might infringe upon the city boundaries, but, in my opinion, in a very positive way because we're doing fuel mitigation and home hardening. The PowerPoint that was passed out to you, that's the presentation that was made to the board. So that's there for you. If you have any questions, I'm happy to discuss it with you afterwards or give you any brief updates that you do have. But I just want to put it on your radar that this is taking place, and we'll keep our fingers crossed for that one area in particular, although there's areas throughout the county that definitely could benefit from it. Thank you.
Thank you, Chief.
Quick, when you get through.
Okay, quick question. Is this in working with the RCD, or is this a parallel project?
Mark Egbert from the
Yeah.
RCD is part of that group.
Okay.
And so there's a lot of factors of being. It's a good collaboration across the board.
That sounds great. So these are looking at like strategic fuel breaks that would, based on
Defensible space is a minimum standard required by the grant, and then there's home hardening and vegetation management. And real briefly, the home hardening that we're looking at is an opportunity to reduce the barriers on local residents, so there may be money that's available to them up front so they don't have to upfront those costs. We're still working through the details of exactly what that look like, but getting fire resistive construction, roof replacement, home hardening with the siding, windows, et cetera. So
Okay.
it's really a good program.
All right, great. Thanks for the update.
I had kind of the same question. I was wondering if this is the same things that Mark Egbert has been sharing with the Fire Safe Council, some of the grants that are, so he's working with your group too?
He's involved with our group, and the one group that we're looking at is, or the grant that we're looking at is through FEMA. It's a pretty large grant, like I said, totaling just over $10 million. So he probably has other grants, other programs he's working on.
It wasn't that much, I know that. So I wondered if they were separate, and because of what you're working on, that doesn't take away from other, there's all kinds of grants out there, I know that. So that's great. I'm really glad to hear.
Absolutely. And your point really is kind of one of the driving forces behind this group is there's a lot of good work that's being done across different facets of the county. And this group is looking to establish a position and an office in the county that would basically be the hub for these activities so that we can coordinate DOT grants and what the fire safe councils and fire departments, what everybody's doing under one umbrella, so we can coordinate that effort.
It's
so we don't
funny you're
overlap.
saying that, because that was one of the discussions I had with a member of our Fire Safe Council at the day of our event. And he was, going around talking to everybody, and he said, you know what, we got to get together. And it was exactly what you're just saying. And because he said, we're all working for the same thing, and yet we're going off in different, So that's great. I'm glad to hear it. Thank you.
Thank you.
Chief, just when would we hear from FEMA if the county's success or if the grant's successful?
So we've sent in and submitted the notice of intent, and we have to finalize the grant proposal by April 8th. And kind of the preliminary discussions is very positive, especially because we're following this up on the heels of the Caldor, which helps our cause. We had an incident, and we're taking steps to mitigate it. So we're pretty optimistic on it.
Great. Sounds good. Thank you.
All right. Thank you for that update. Let's move on to item
Mayor?
7. Yep.
Could I allow our city engineer to make an announcement of one more meeting? At this
Sure.
time? Thank you.
Thank you very much, Mayor and council members. I just want to remind everybody that a week from today, we have our Placerville Drive public meeting here at Town Hall from 4 p.m. to 7 p.m. We hope to see the public here. It's, our first public meeting for this project since before the pandemic, so we're really looking forward to moving that project forward. Thanks.
Thanks,
What
Rebecca.
I'm sorry.
And I'm sorry, I completely forgot to mention that it's on my calendar, and it's going to be a great meeting as well. So, thanks.
Have you been sending emails to the Placerville Drive folks, or?
Everybody's invited, yeah.
I don't think they know about it. I'm sorry.
That's okay. We sent out postcards.
Okay.
We have Facebook posts and things going out too. So, then there's going to be a mention of it in this coming Constant Contact. But yeah, we actually sent out mailers throughout the whole corridor.
They're a hard group to get together.
Yes,
so
ma'am.
That's why I wondered
Yes.
if you, okay.
Yeah. We did reach out to them though.
Okay, thank
Yeah.
you.
Sure.
I know I already reposted your post from earlier today, but what day was it again?
It is next Tuesday.
Next
so you know how we
Tuesday,
have our
okay.
5th Tuesdays, we tried to squeeze in one more meeting, right? So that was the one we snuck in under the radar for that.
All right. Thank you.
And for those in the audience and watching at home, this is for the the Placerville Drive bike lanes.
Correct. Placerville
and
Drive.
bridge widening project.
Yes, ma'am. It's Placerville Drive bicycle and pedestrian facilities project and the bridge replacement project.
And this is a really cool project that is going to be coming up in the future that we are working on. It's a long process, but it's a very cool project that's going to really revitalize Placerville Drive. So
Yes.
Really needed.
Yeah. So, all right. Thank you for that.
For sure.
That reminder and announcement. All right. Moving on to item 7, the consent calendar.
I'll make a motion to approve consent calendar.
Minus the 7.6 that we removed earlier. So, okay.
I will second.
All right. We have a first and a second.
And we should ask for public comment first.
Oh, yes.
before- yeah.
Yes. At this point, we'll open item 7, the consent calendar, up to public comment if anybody would like to speak on any of the items under the consent calendar. All right. Seeing none, we'll bring it back to the council for a roll call vote.
Councilmember Borelli?
Aye.
Councilmember No?
Aye.
Vice Mayor Zaragoza?
Aye.
Mayor Taylor?
Aye. Thank you. All right. So now we're moving to item 8, public comment. I see a lot of new faces in the meeting tonight, and I want to welcome you. If you are not familiar with public comment, I'll just go over a couple things real fast. Public comment is for our residents to speak to the council and to make their comments and concerns public. Everybody who wishes to speak gets one pass at the mic and 3 minutes. Please keep your comments to 3 minutes. There is a timer up here that will let you know where you are in your comments. I really don't like interrupting people, but I will just so that everybody has the fair amount and opportunity to speak. So with that, 8.1 is written communication. Regina, do we have any written communication?
No, Madam Mayor.
Okay. So 8.2 is oral communications.
Hello, good evening.
Hello.
Ted Juba, City of Placerville. The house at 3113 Clark Street is right next to Rotary Park. My neighbors and I have filed multiple complaints with the Development Services Department, the Placerville PD. We've tried the county sheriff too, but that didn't work, about the criminal element at this house. There's trash piled in the yard, and it stays there until it's burned. There's multiple dilapidated vehicles in the driveway in the yard, and 2 of them caught fire in the last week. Smells of sulfur and ammonia are common in the area, and these are byproducts of the chemical process to make methamphetamine. People come and go at all hours of the night. People known to Placerville PD to be involved in drug activity. And I can assure you that they're not holding a prayer group in there. There's a generator that runs 24 hours a day because there's no PG&E hookup at this house. Placerville PD is a frequent guest in our neighborhood and is aware of one person living in this house with an open warrant in another county. Unfortunately, the police are not able to arrest this person because the other county is not willing to pay for extradition, which is a feature of law enforcement I didn't know about. A PPD sergeant emailed us this morning and said that this was not the responsibility of the police department, along with some sob story about some poor fellow down in his luck who can't afford to clean it up. And this is directly next to where the Little League plays. And we want to know what has to happen to get something done about this. Is it has to be a violent crime where children are there to watch? Does it have to be a wildfire that starts in downtown Placerville? I'm here with my neighbors to escalate this problem to the council. There are other neighbors who are not here tonight out of fear of retribution from the people who live in this house. So I can assure you that they would not be afraid if this was just some retiree who couldn't pay his electrical bill. I'm asking the city to remove this criminal element from the neighborhood. Once these people are gone, I'd then like the city to use either the power of eminent domain or civil asset forfeiture to seize this property, tear down the house, and annex it to Rotary Park. I want to add that there are some people who are helping in this regard, specifically Pierre in the Development Department and Officer Jefferson of the Placerville PD have both been very helpful, but everything they can do is limited, which is why we're here tonight. But enough is enough. So thank you for your time.
Thank you for your comments.
Okay, I'm Rob Camilleri. I live actually right next door to the house that he is describing. I live at 3105 Clark Street. Probably my main concern is the fires. He just had a fire in a vehicle just last Sunday that was probably about 5 feet away from my house. The fire department came out, they put the fire out, and that was the end of the question, and that was the end of the thing. He's also had another fire in a vehicle that was actually on the street of Clark Street that Officer Jefferson has towed away since then. He has 6 vehicles that are all disabled there. I have contacted Officer Jefferson as far as email. She has got back to me and several times. She's doing a great job as far as her limitations are. I asked her to forward the emails to the chief. The chief has since then gave one of his sergeant my info. I have talked to Sergeant Gooddow. He said that he is not the sergeant of this area, so he gave me the officer's sergeant's name of this area that takes care of this area. He was supposed to contact me in the last 3 weeks. Have not heard from this gentleman, so I emailed him yesterday morning. And also CC Mindy right here on the emails, so he emailed us back, and it wasn't a pleasant email, kind of like he understands the house. He doesn't understand what we go through. I smell sulfur, garbage, worry about my house on fire. There's a lot of stuff going on at that house. I see familiar faces every day. I see new faces every day. I come from the Bay Area. I come from East Bay. I know what's going on at that house. It's not good. I mean, he told Officer Sergeant Litz that he's a veteran and he has to worry about his monthly income at the first of the month. Well, that's not the case because I've seen money being exchanged. I've seen drugs being exchanged at this house. I've been told by the sergeants to call. I call the non-emergency line, and they said, we will get an officer out there. I will sit there and wait for an officer to come out, and I've never seen one except for one time when I asked them to, can you go tell them to turn their hose off because they're just watering the street. So it's been an ongoing battle. He just had moved in there a year and a half, and it's been hell for the last year and a half. It is not a nice place. I just wish the police and the fire department to do something because I don't want like Paradise or Santa Rosa to happen all over again because we're close right up the street. So I'm just letting you know and expressing my opinion. Thank you.
Thank you for your comments.
Hello.
Hi.
My name is Mindy Juba. I'm Ted's wife. I would like to go on record echoing the sentiments of my husband and my neighbor regarding this house at 3113 Clark Street. I can no longer let my kids walk down the street in a neighborhood that we moved into for that specific reason, to give them the freedom to play in a small town safe upbringing. They're not safe at the park either, and that was the main reason we bought the home that we currently have. It abuts the back end of the park. I no longer will let them go over there because drug deals happen on a regular basis as spillover from this house. I don't feel safe walking past the house, actually, as the occupants have threatened me and chased me down in the past. There's a list of issues and grievances that both Rob and Ted touched on that I could go into, but I don't have enough time tonight, but I think you all are pretty familiar with what's going on anyway. There are neighbors, though, that are too afraid to be here tonight to speak out their own experience for fear of retributions by the occupants of the house. And that needs to be known, and I want you all to think about that. If we have people that are too afraid to speak out and speak up for their rights, that goes beyond just a trash heap eyesore in a neighborhood. We have contacted everyone we possibly can think of to address this trash heap of a house. We are escalating this matter to the council in an effort to find a solution because nobody we've talked to have had the power to do anything decisive. And what's so important to us is to have the integrity of our beautiful town maintained, have the safety maintained for all residents, and for kids to grow up in a safe place that is becoming less and less an option as urban plight encroaches on rural areas and crime spikes everywhere. And Placerville is such a safe and special place that it breaks my heart to have to drive by this home multiple times a day and smell it and see it and actually be fearful that I don't know if they're going to chase me down again, follow me to my house, or what's going to happen. So I just ask that this goes on record and that we all work together to figure out a way to address this, because this man is not a poor veteran. He is a criminal. He's a drug dealer, and he is not additive to our neighborhood or our society. Thank you.
Thank you.
I'm voluntarily stating my name as Leo Bennett Cochon. As we're all aware, there's no need to identify oneself. So I urge you, having heard this and been in their situation, very heart-rending, to consider what I experienced at the Board of Supervisors, which is they still have hybrid meetings. I don't know what the costs are, but I think the level of citizen involvement that you can get from Zoom meetings is worth the cost, and that's what I experienced with the City Council. This city went through quite an issue and got lots of calls. That could be a problem, and we are talking about that at the Board of Supervisors, at the different school boards, and I just wanted to bring it here. You've spoken about the good governance workshops that you collaborate with the county, and I'm just suggesting when they appointed the new trustee for the El Dorado Union School District, she worked very hard in all of the different high schools, Measure A, and her commitment, even though it didn't pass, was building that listing environment. We spoke about that from Mayor Zaragoza in the context of the new issues, And I think perhaps trying to collaborate all together and have small workshops on good citizenship. So we all learn to be good citizens when we come here and don't, give you such a hard time for the little bit of money that you get. I wear a mask because my wife is immune compromised. Again, I'm comparing you to the board. I apologize. Later on, I'll be telling you what a great job you're doing ahead of them in the homeless issues. But their sign says the state of California strongly recommends masks, specifically to protect those of us that are less vulnerable. It's a very controversial issue, but unvaccinated people are at 4 to 100,000, which is considered substantial spread, and moderate folk are at 2.6. And I'm triple boosted and all that, but perhaps you could gently encourage people to realize there are still people at risk as the variants move around. Thank you for your time.
Thank you, Leo.
Good evening. I'm Max Storton. I live in Placerville, and I would just like to mention to the...
Excuse me, would you mind pulling your microphone down a little bit? Thank you.
Does that work? Mm-hmm. Okay. I'd just like to say I had interaction with a fairly new Placerville employee who did an incredible job in the last 3-4 days. Her name's Diane Palmer, and she's... what is she? Enforcement official for the building department. And I know there's a lot of complaints, and I'm someone who's expressed those complaints many times in a very similar situation to this. So I will talk to these people and tell them how that went down. But this is someone who's come to town and is doing a really good job enforcing the building codes. With, there's a lot of renovation that goes on around here, and nobody gets permits and doesn't follow the rules. And it's really helpful to build a town where the rules are actually followed. So I just commend her for the work that she's done, and the council should know about it. Okay? Thanks.
Thank you.
Good evening, Mayor and City Council. Sue Rodman, resident of Placerville and member of the Fire Safe Council. And I was really thrilled to see that our City Council came to the Fire Safe Council event, and that our fire chief was there, and that we had someone from the police department. And I thought it was very well attended, and there was a lot of good information there. And let's not stop there. Everybody needs to take what they learned and implement it so that we actually can improve the fire safety of our beautiful community. Thank you.
Thank you, Sue.
Good evening, Kirk Smith of Placerville. Just to let you know, I would like to see you sometime soon put on the case of the building issues that were described earlier about people not getting permits, and most importantly with reference to historic preservation, because the planning planning commission just generally does not enforce those regulations. When I was before them, must have been almost a dozen years ago, it was a contested case, and during the break one of the commissioners approached me and asked me how did I think they should decide the case. And that's just a more dramatic example, but I've seen it frequently ever since. They're just not being enforced. There are a couple huge exceptions that have been crafted. One of them is that, it's already been modified already. Someone, for example, comes in earlier and puts in new windows when it should be the traditional style windows. And the answer is, okay, go ahead, let's change all of them so they'll be systematic. Or the cost. The cost is too expensive. There needs to be a briefing book for commissioners so they understand what rulemaking is about, or in this instance, what adjudication is all about, so they do it well. The County Planning Commission sends all matters related to historic buildings to the county historical society for an evaluation. Ours doesn't. They used to, but they stopped doing it after that group said that the Hangman's Tree building should be saved and was historic. Why don't we do it? The History Museum has addresses with photographs listed to look at them. We don't do that. So you rely on an applicant who has a reason to offer things. Nobody is ever put under oath. I don't know why. It's true for everybody else I know across the country and different jurisdictions. So I've seen misrepresentations, whether they're on purpose or not, who knows? They're just categorically false. It wasn't too long ago when an issue came up about replacing teardrop or the lap siding on a building, which had already been torn off before. And the applicant said, well, it would be too expensive to go have it milled and it'd take a long time. And I pointed out that I, among other buildings, had a century-old building that was replaced with lap siding because it had already been pre-milled, and it comes that way, so it's available in big sheets. And that was discounted. Nobody paid any attention. So a few days ago, I went to Diamond Lumber, and what do you know? This is pre-made, 16 inches tall, 16 feet long, and this is just one of my many styles. They can get it in 2 days. So you never do any kind of verification, and it diminishes the integrity of the process. So nobody ever came in and addressed the subject of ex parte communication until after an appeal had been raised. I'd raised it, a number of other people had raised it over and over and over, but it wasn't addressed until the previous county council did, or the city attorney did. So it's something that needs to be re-examined. I hope you look at it soon. There's a lot of reasons to update it. Thank you.
Thank you, Kirk. All right, I see no one else stepping up. All right, so we will go ahead and close public comment. To the residents on Clark Street, I just want to say that I really sympathize with what you're going through. This is the first that I've heard of what's going on. If you want to, we can't take any action at this meeting or discuss it in any detail. But if you want to send me an email, I'll talk to staff and and follow up with you. Thank you. Yep. My email is ktaylor@cityofplacerville.org. All right. Yeah. I'm sorry to hear about what's happening, and yeah. And Pierre, please pass on the kudos to Diane Palmer. It's not every day that a code enforcement officer gets compliments. Thank you everyone that came and spoke tonight. Appreciate it. All right, moving on to
Mayor.
Yes.
Do you want to make any comments about the Planning Commission and what we're trying to do there, or do
Sure.
you want to wait?
Do you feel comfortable making a comment about? I wasn't sure if it was.
I think there's a
premature.
couple of things that I
Okay,
will mention. There has been some questions about the implementation of the Secretary of Interior guidelines for historic buildings. I have been working with council and talking to Pierre about that. We do plan to hold a workshop, a joint workshop in April with the council and the Planning Commission jointly, and have a presentation done on those guidelines, and I'm working with Pierre to set that up. The second thing I want to mention, Councilmember Thomas was going to make this comment. He was called away on an emergency, so he does plan to appeal the decision of the Planning Commission that was made at the most recent meeting. He's been in contact with Mr. Rivas about that. So the reason I want to make that is if there are people out there that we're planning to appeal, Councilmember Thomas does plan to appeal that on behalf of the City Council. So
I'll just make a couple of comments or two, nothing too big, but I think it's important for us to have that conversation and to relook at those standards, especially in light of SB 9 and SB 10. There are there's some carve-outs in there for historical districts. City of Pasadena has already gotten crosshairs with the Attorney General in relation to historical districts and SB 9 and SB 10. So we have to be consistent and following these standards if we're going to, if that ever comes across for us when it comes to implementation of SB 9 and SB 10. So I think it's really good timing, and I think I'm probably the last person, and it's been a long time since we had, I think, SHPO that came in that Pierre helped put together, I think, when I was on Historical Advisory Committee still. So it's been a while. So it would be a good update for not only for us as council members, but for the Planning Commission as well.
Michael,
Yep.
do you want to share with the, in case people don't know about what you're
Yeah, so SB 9 and SB 10 are the new laws that essentially have ended single-family home zoning in California. There are some exceptions, though, for like historical districts. This is a very specific item within SB 9, SB 10 that you may not be able to say knock a house down, certainly a historic house, and then build a fourplex in order to increase housing inventory in an area.
But other parts of town are going to be allowed.
But other parts of town will be allowed, and I know there's been just some offhand discussion about maybe there's other areas that could certainly look at historical designations. That's why I wanted to sort of redo our historical inventory as well. I thought it was all sort of good timing to look at all that. So this is great that we're going to be able to do this, and want to thank folks that brought it up as well. So Kirk, thank you.
All right. Moving on to item 9, we have no items pulled from consent calendar. We pulled it off, not for discussion. We removed it for, what?
I thought once something was on the agenda, we had to take comment. Even if we weren't going to.
No.
Okay.
Well, we asked. So we did ask for public comment on the consent agenda, and there was no public comment.
We have no ordinances, no public hearings, so that brings us to 12, discussion and action items. And 12.1 is to authorize myself to sign and forward a letter to EDOC-COC regarding the strategic plan. And Mr. Morris, you have this report.
I have the report, but you could probably handle it as well as I can. You wrote the letter, but anyway, this is as the council requested at our last meeting to prepare this letter for the mayor's signature. It has been prepared. I have one comment that has been requested, a correction. On page 2 of the letter, the next to the last paragraph, it talks about the city of Placerville is the county seat and the location of Health and Human Services, probation, and the jail, etc. We are actually not the center for the probation office. So just remove probation from that paragraph.
Didn't we say to insert hospital?
Well, that's
Or we have
something
to
you have to
decide
do that
that.
tonight. That suggestion has
That was
been
a
made,
suggestion.
but, yeah.
And I am certainly fine with removing probation if that is not indeed accurate. My apologies for that to anyone that took issue with that. In terms of adding hospital, I'm open to that. It does say along with healthcare and nonprofit services, so it might be a little redundant, but I will.
You could do the and or the hospital just switch it up a little bit and make hospital along with healthcare and others,
true.
just to make it more consistent.
So where do you want?
Where do you want to put hospital?
So I would say Placerville is the county seat and location of Health and Human Services, jail, hospital, and healthcare or nonprofit services.
Got it. Thank you.
Yeah.
That Oxford comma.
Any other questions or comments on this? I'll open it up to the public before we move. All right. We'll open this up to the public at this time, if anyone would like to speak on it.
This is where I get to praise you for being very far ahead of the county. They were discussing their housing element today, and unfortunately, from the perception of the advocates, we felt that they are not putting the emphasis necessary on the homeless issues and kind of watering it down. So they did make a commitment that they would take a stronger look at it in April. And I think the sentence that you crafted, I'll be sharing with them, that the existence of these facilities and services within the Placerville limits creates a situation in residents and businesses have been disproportionately impacted by homeless encampments. And that you're asking EDOCs, by the board also, to consider this and try to make these, not try, commit to making these services fairly distributed throughout the county. In the interest of time, may I comment on 12.2, since I'm not here?
No. Sorry.
Other boards don't do that. But I won't use my own protection.
Sue Rodman, resident of Placerville and user of our Marshall Hospital and the health care that's provided. And I think this is a great letter. And if you're going to add the hospital, you might want to add that it is the only trauma center on the West Slope. I mean, it is the only Class 1, I think, trauma center on the West Slope, and it's here in Placerville. But good job.
Thank you, Sue.
Good evening, Jane McGinnis. I wanted to say, first of all, I want to speak for both Pastor Jonathan and myself. He wanted so badly to be here tonight. He's running a fever with a bad sore throat and didn't want to scare anybody. I am without notes because I wanted to just say to you from my heart, thank you, thank you, thank you so much. It's only been 2 years and 2 months since we were here talking about a camping ordinance. And in that 2 years and 2 months, there has been such a revolutionary change in hearts and minds in the public and in government. And I'm just so grateful. Romans 13 says a lot about government and how people are supposed to respond to government, and the fact that those who have the responsibility to govern have been put there by God. And that's why we are to pay attention to what you have to say for us, because you're working for our good. Sometimes that's not always the case, and I think we're very lucky right now to live in Placerville, to live in El Dorado County, but especially in Placerville, because you have looked at both people who are living under wretched conditions and looked at public safety, fire safety, public health issues, and together have served both of them. So you are being amazingly good civil servants, but you're also combining that with a servant attitude toward people who are living those wretched lives. And that's what Jesus asked us to do. So on behalf of all of us, I just wanted to say thank you to all of you. It means a great deal to us.
Thank you, Jane. All right, seeing no other comment on 12.1, I will close public comment. Or is there one more comment? Anyone? No? Okay, I will close public comment and bring it back to the council for a motion or more discussion.
Okay. I had 2 small changes I just wanted to make.
Sure.
In the first paragraph, the last line, the draft strategic plan is thorough and demonstrates EDOC's commitment, goes on. I wanted to strike is thorough and I'll explain that. I didn't feel that the plan was as thorough as it could have been. If you look at the Placer County strategic plan, they go through the outreach that they did. They identify the questions and who they talked to and that analysis. That was completely missing from our plan, as well as they didn't talk to our police chief, which the police deal with a level of homeless that Health and Human Services doesn't always. So in order to be thorough, I thought that they needed to talk to our police department. I thought that they needed to identify the impacts on our city, as well as have the lessons learned from Hangtown Haven, all the things that we've tried to move forward. So I do appreciate their efforts, but I thought calling it thorough was going a little bit too far. The other just small change I wanted to make is in the second paragraph, the last sentence, and we talk about safety and sanitation within our city through emergency shelter. I thought our city should say the county. We've really been discussing this as a county-wide program, and not getting specifics within the city just yet. The last line, last sentence of the second paragraph. Second paragraph.
Next page.
No, first
No,
page.
she was
First
right.
page?
Kara?
First page.
That starts with our community?
Correct.
And what you're just saying, so say the county cannot wait.
No, I'm saying
No.
our community cannot wait for permanent supportive housing and low-income housing units to be built before addressing the most urgent needs and safety and sanitation within our city through emergency shelters. I just think instead of our city, we should be saying the county. We should be consistent.
Okay. What is the consensus of the council on these proposed changes?
Do you have a suggestion for replacing thorough and demonstrates, or
Just strike it.
just take it
Yeah,
out?
if you just strike it, the rest of the sentence is fine.
Just
So that's just, the plan demonstrates EDOC's commitment to addressing.
So take
Yeah.
out is through and.
Okay.
Oh.
Just leave there. Yeah.
And then within our county through emergency shelter.
Correct. Just
Yeah, I'm good with that.
really minor.
Patty?
I'm good with that.
Okay. I'm good with that. All right. I would entertain a motion if there's no other.
I'll make a motion to approve the letter with the two,
Three.
yes. Three changes to the wording.
I'll second it.
Is there four?
Oh, did we want to add the only hospital as recommended by the public?
Oh, the only trauma center on the western slope.
No, there's just three.
I do appreciate Sue's point that Marshall is amazing and that it is the only trauma center. I don't know if it needs to be, in the context of
Yeah, we're just saying
this
hos-
sentence. It's,
Everything else
it's
is generic.
The context is that these services cause our city to be impacted disproportionately.
Yeah,
So I don't know if it-
I wasn't recommending the trauma center. I was just saying, we went ahead and put the word hospital in there. We're the only hospital on the western slope, and that kind of emphasizes the issue.
Mhm.
But, if you do or don't, I just thought it was worth consideration.
1, 2, 3.
Well, whatever the number is, I'll second it. I think it's four. Cleve has convinced me it's four.
Just clarify that these are what you want. So we're removing the word probation.
Yes.
Correct. Oh, I forgot about
We're
probation.
adding hospital in
I
there.
forgot
and then
probation, too.
County at the bottom of that paragraph, and taking out is through and on the first paragraph. So those, right?
So 4, yes.
Okay.
Yes. All right, so we had a motion.
I second.
And we have a second. Okay, so roll call, please.
Councilmember No?
Aye.
Councilmember Borelli?
Aye.
Vice Mayor Saragosa?
Aye.
Mayor Taylor?
Aye. Thank you. All right, moving on to 12.2. This is to adopt a resolution extending the MOU between the city and Housing El Dorado for use of the city-owned property for the nomadic homeless shelter. And Mr. Morris has this report.
Thank you, Mayor and Council. As you know, earlier this year, we approved a memorandum of understanding with Housing El Dorado for use of 525 Main Street for a nomadic shelter 3 nights per week through March 31st, 2022. Recently, we were contacted by Housing El Dorado. The program has run quite well, I think, from their perspective, and ours, I would add. And therefore, they requested, would it be possible to continue the program through April 30th? For most of us who have lived up here any period of time, we can still get some inclement weather in April and cold weather, et cetera. And therefore, there's that need potentially for that during that time. In addition to that request to run through April 30th, they also requested if they could use the building 7 nights per week rather than just the 3 nights per week that they had been using it. Based on the mitigation measures we have in place to make sure that there are not issues there, and based on a review of what's happened over the last 3 months as we've run this, staff was comfortable that we could make that recommendation to extend this only to the end of April, and then it would close down at that time. The only other thing that was part of this was the request was to change the time. Currently, they're required to be out of the building by 7:30 in the morning. There's been some concerns that on cold nights that could be an issue. They had requested that they be allowed to be there until 9 in the morning. I had a little bit of concern in that 9 is the time that many of our businesses and et cetera open up, and that perhaps my recommendation is that we allow that to 8:30, so extend it 1 hour over what it currently is rather than to 9 o'clock. The hope is that, and again, I want to emphasize, most people don't even know this is going on in the building. It's very non-conspicuous. But there is one business. We've had a couple of concerns raised by the business next door, and therefore anything we can continue to do to talk to them and make sure that their concerns are addressed, I think would be good. But my recommendation is that we look at extending it to 8:30, the time that they are to be out. All of the other conditions are as the same as what are in the original agreement. We have an amended agreement here for you, MOU, for you to adopt if you're in agreement with this. And there are representatives from Housing Alvarado here tonight who can speak to this if you would like also. So, well, I'm happy to answer any questions you may have at this time, and I'll turn it back to you, Mayor.
All right, thank you. Do we have any questions for Cleve?
The only thing I wanted to, you didn't mention why they requested 7 days instead of 3.
Well, there's a couple of things. One is that it saves them money for transportation with gas prices right now. They are going all the way from, I think the farthest is Faith Episcopal Church down in Cameron Park. So going from the upper room, transporting people down there and then back up during the day. So it saves them a considerable amount of cost for transportation. Also, I believe the churches were about ready to.
Well, don't
to
they?
end it.
Yeah, that was
Yeah.
with the thing that stuck in my mind is
Yeah.
that the churches, I think they close it end of March, and so.
Well, they had an agreement to go to the end of March, as did we. So they could have requested that, but they felt
I
it was
see
more
what you're
appropriate.
saying. Yeah. Oh,
So
I think those
anyway,
are legitimate reasons.
Anyway, I think those are the main reasons. It is a real coordination advantage. Not only do they have to haul the people down there, but they have to haul all of their equipment and et cetera, food, snacks, et cetera, all of the things that they use for the shelter, mats for them to sleep on, bedding, et cetera. So
Are those removed those are not removed every
they're
night?
removed from the churches, but not from our
But not
building.
from our, okay.
Correct. And so this would save them time and money in that transportation and the removal costs of those things each day. So, yeah.
Okay.
All right. So with no other questions for Cleve, we'll open this up to public comment.
Good evening, Mayor and council members. My name is Charlie McDonald. I'm a resident of Placerville and the program manager for the winter shelter, Pathways Winter Shelter. I'm just up here. I think Maureen will come up and give you some statistics and some other information. What we had this year is a little bit different than what normally people think of housing the homeless. I think when we think of homeless, we think of our community up here on Upper Broadway and the Hill, where you're dealing with drug addicts and tweakers and chronic alcoholics. The winter has been mild, and they haven't sought shelter. The people have been serving shelter, and we've been averaging 14 a night, and as high as I think 19 was our record. Are people, women, looking for a safe place to sleep at night? We're looking for people with mental health issues that don't fit in to the community on Upper Broadway, that are loners and live mostly in fear, and they've been able to come to the shelter and find a place of safe refuge, of acceptance, and safety. And I think Maureen has some quotes, and you'll find most of all my address, I feel safe here. First rest I've had in months was at the shelter. We deal with discharges from Marshall Hospital. The people are coming out of surgery, have no place to go. They're putting them on the streets, delivering them to us. We've had one from the psychiatric hospital that came straight to us that we question that we're not even in the ability to care for these people. But that's a completely different issue. But that's who we're helping and serving, are people with health issues, mental health issues, lonely people, and the weak and the vulnerable out there. And that's why it's important that we can just give them another 30 days of safe rest. We want to be able to do that. So thank you.
Thank you, Charlie.
Good evening, Cleve, Council, Mayor, staff, Maureen Dion Perry with Housing El Dorado. And first and foremost, I want to thank you so much for taking the first step when you allowed us to use a building on Main Street for the winter lodging program. That was quite amazing when that happened. And, you know, everyone who knows about this has been just flabbergasted that you did it. And I thank you sincerely. We have community meetings periodically, and one of them we asked the participants what they liked about the shelter. And first and foremost, they expressed their heartfelt gratitude for the shelter, the people, the respect, the community, and the food. It's been a lifesaver for me and provided a safe place to stay and recover after being discharged from the hospital. The shelter helps me with my recovery and provides a choice of sobriety. I can get up in the night and be safe, and I'm receiving help to find a room to rent. The shelter is excellent the way it is, especially when compared to others. So the overwhelming feeling was just made us all like tear up when we heard from folks. The main suggestions to improve were, it's hard to get up at 6 o'clock in the morning. Stay open after March. And Placerville needs a daytime place to socialize, get help, keep belonging safe, volunteer, and work. So I think that we are serving a need, you are serving a need, and extending this another month, I think we can do that as unobtrusively as it has been going. We exit and enter quietly and unobtrusively. Charlie told you a little bit about our folks, and they really do come from all walks of life. Veterans, youth aged out of foster care, disabled, and some of the things from the psychiatric hospital discharges. I was really quite unprepared that is the place of discharge from the psych hospital here in town. So we provided 641 bed nights to 59 people, 10 to 19 guests per night. We have 2 people who have found jobs, 2 people who have found housing, numerous medical issues addressed along with phones, addresses, benefits, substance abuse treatment. So we're providing navigation services in this limited capacity, which is hard because the night isn't the best time to navigate. But we're doing the best. And in addition, our little side gig has become vaccinating homeless folks. And so we vaccinated around 30 homeless people in our county because vaccination is required for anyone who wants to come. We initially thought this was going to be a barrier, But it's turned out there's only really one person that I've talked with who didn't come. So I hope that you will really consider extending this as Cleve's proposing. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Maureen.
Prior to my children doing an intervention and saying I really need to get a normal job, which translated into 20 years of teaching students with severe cognitive issues, my wife and I ran a very small 6-bed out of our home program. And it's heart-rendering to travel back to my hometown in San Diego and everywhere and see how homelessness has just continued and continued and continued. And as we added children, then we started to cut back on some of the more challenging populations. And again, my heart is touched by the stories that were shared in terms of the homeless population that lives in daily fear. So just so grateful for everything you guys are doing. It's considered exemplary that you have the triad, the 3 approach, you as the government, the nonprofits, and the churches, and hope you figure out a way, even if it's small, to be able to continue to address these fear-based issues. I love the fact that you're extending it through April, where we'll truly be blooming in the spring, and I always try to find a joke. So I just thought it was great, Maureen, that you ended it with warm regards. Thank you.
Thank you, Leo.
Sue Rodman, resident of Placerville, and this makes me really proud of my city. My little hometown is leading the way. And I wonder why April 30th is the cutoff date. That's also the beginning of fire season, you guys. So are we trying to turn homeless people out of our shelter so that they can go up on the hill and then we have wildfire problems? I wonder why we can't just continue this and give people who really, it sounds like it's a very successful program and they are getting results. People are moving on. People are getting the help that they need. So I don't know why April 30th. I'm glad we're at least doing that. I'd like to see it just continue. There isn't another use for that building right now. So why don't we just continue this program so that we can take care of at least some of these people?
Thank you, Sue. All right, I see no other public comment on this, so I will close public comment on 12.2 and bring it back to the council.
Madam Mayor, if you don't mind, could I ask a couple of questions of folks? I don't know if it would be
for Housing El Dorado.
For Housing El Dorado. So Maureen, I don't know if I thought it'd be helpful for the community, just a little bit more background. And I'm just curious. So the 2 folks that you were able to get into housing, I don't know, I mean, without sharing anything personal, obviously, about them, but is there anything unique? 'Cause I'm also just looking at, if we could get these 2, are there other best practice, something around that we could do to try to help others get into more housing? So that was one question. And then the second question was, it sounds like you had mostly female folks. No, was it mix? Multi,
a third, 2/3, a third women.
And what were the age ranges? Do you have
yes, 22 to 65.
22 to 65. And you average?
Was Dennis older than 65? Somewhere could go a little higher.
And it averaged about 14 folks a night?
Yes.
Okay. So anyway, I don't know if you had anything to add on the folks that were able to get housing.
Yeah, I don't think there's anything magic here. I think it's really just kind of beating the bushes to find rooms in a house. That's basically what we were able to find. And so it's really, the work that I've done has really just been a matter of looking at the internet, looking over and over to find the lowest cost places you can find. Can you find rooms or small tiny houses or something? We don't have any magic solution, and as you know, affordable housing is pretty scarce. And I'm still, that's one of the future areas of work for Housing El Dorado that I think is one of the quickest things to do would be for us to get into leasing houses, even purchasing them. We're working on establishing a land trust and a land bank, and hopefully may be able to accept donations of land and properties to move this forward. But that's leasing, master leasing houses, bringing together groups with some supervision. Seems like the quickest thing that we could do to get more housing available to people. And we certainly are open to any ideas that you have for how to do that quickly, this year, now. That's our goal.
Okay. Thank you. I really appreciate that. Thank you for all the work.
Any
You're
other
welcome.
questions
Any other?
for Maureen while she's up there? No. Thank you.
Thank you.
We've closed public comment on this, but are you addressing one of the questions for Housing El Dorado?
Yeah.
Okay.
I'm Peg Vanderkar, resident here. The thought just came to me that it would be great to carry on. It probably can't be at this building, but if you all know of another place in Placerville or outside Placerville, please let us know. We're happy to move what we're doing and keep on.
Thank you, Peg. All right, council members. Any discussion?
No, I just, Madam Mayor, thank you for taking the lead and getting the letter, or not the letter, I'm off, sorry.
No worries.
I'm back on the old one. No, I'll make a motion to move forward with the MOU. I think it's the right thing to do, and again, I think it's the city of Placerville taking the lead once more. I think we've all said this, that we're willing to do our part, and I hope the county can kind of step up and do a lot more as we go forward here. This isn't just a Placerville issue; it's a county issue. So, again, just trying to use our bully pulpit to say, "Come on, county, let's get this together here."
I'll second it.
Does your motion and second include Cleve's suggestion to end at 8:30?
Yes, as staff proposed.
Okay.
Correct.
And that's the way it's written in the MOU. So, yeah.
Okay.
Yes,
I would just like to make a couple comments, and Cleve, chime in if I miss something or you say something wrong. The reason that we cannot extend this indefinitely at this building is that there are actually plans for the building, which is why the city bought the building in the first place. And the building also needs a lot of work. It really is not intended for
shelter,
a permanent thing that just continues without having significant amount of work done on it. Would you like to add anything else? Okay. And then I do want to recognize the county. We are working really well with the county, and I think that for the first time since I've been on the council, and my understanding is that possibly for the first time ever, both the county and the city are, share the idea that having an emergency shelter set up is an urgent matter, and we are working towards that goal together cooperatively. And I want to recognize that they are also being good partners in this, and helped fund the nomadic shelter as well. With that, we have a first and a second, so roll call vote on this.
Councilmember Brawley?
Aye.
Councilmember No?
Aye.
Vice Mayor Zaragoza?
Aye.
Mayor Taylor?
Aye. Thank you. Congratulations, Housing El Dorado. And best of luck finding a year-round permanent location for this great program. Moving on to item 12.3. This is approving the Community Services Department downtown special event new arrangements for street closures, and directing the community service to negotiate the agreements with co-sponsors. And Mr. Zeller has this report.
Thank you, Mayor Taylor. So the purpose of this arrangement is to ensure that the special events that close Main Street serve the interests of the community. And the City Council did approve my department, Community Services, to act as the sponsor of the 7 special events. And then this staff report seeks to provide the structure behind this change. And we're going to be laying out the main goals of the city as outlined in a draft agreement that's attached to the staff report. And it's the intention that the city enter into agreements with co-sponsors to assign the rights, responsibilities, costs, and any revenue sharing in the execution of these special events. So under this agreement, the city would be the sponsor and be responsible for several things: the public safety plan and working with the police department to get the necessary officer coverage, provide and pay for the insurance for each event, coordinate the preparation, the setup, and the tear down of the venue with Public Works Department and my own staff, and oversee the accounting of the fees and charges to participants, vendors, and the public in cooperation with the co-sponsors in the operation of the events. The main goals with the city as a sponsor are to have authority over the manner and participation of each event, and also ensure that the events has continuity from year to year, whether or not a co-sponsor is able to continue to co-sponsor year to year. And also to be able to capture a portion of the revenue from those events that generate some over their cost in order to cover all or a portion of the 7 events' overall city expenditures. And that would be per calendar year, because that's kind of the way that we manage those. So a little bit of background. In February of 2020, the City Council set the limit of 7 events for Main Street, and those are listed in your staff report on page 1. And then in January, staff came back to council and approval was given for community services to return to the council, which we're doing today, with a draft agreement which the city would enter into with a willing co-sponsor for each event to establish the terms, including the venue, the layout, participants, vendors, and other potential groups, build a budget, and agree to the allocation of surplus revenue over costs if that is the outcome of the event. And as I had said, the draft agreement's included as an attachment. So also in your packet, we've provided a draft budget covering both the expected costs and the potential revenues for each event. And in this budget, there are 2 events that have the potential for generating revenue, the Oktoberfest and Winterlust, or a comparable event, since we know Winterlust did not participate in the past year. So the other 5 have the potential for costs to be offset by donations and fees normally paid to the sponsor for participation in the event, but they're not necessarily revenue generators. And so it's the goal of the city to have a balanced budget each year and or work towards this goal of a balanced budget as the new arrangement becomes familiar with co-sponsors. So we will seek to enter into agreements with co-sponsors, and the staff report says here that are either qualified 501c3 nonprofits or co-sponsors in a relationship with a 501c3. Really looking at that, we had looked at this from the perspective of either the 501c3 having other partners or a co-sponsor partnering with a 501c3. And after consideration and after the staff report was finalized, we feel like the primary partnership is best represented by an agreement between the city and the 501c3, and best for the community. And we can discuss that after I wrap up the staff report commentary. So under options, the council can approve the resolution and draft agreement, direct staff to take no action or other actions. And also on the cost estimate for each of the 7 events is attached, as I had said, and it illustrates a net profit of around $58.83 between total city costs and recoverable revenues, considering the events in total for the calendar year. And as we're on a fiscal year, the only event that really falls within this fiscal year is the Wagon Train Days event. And so that shouldn't be a big impact to the budget, and staff will be incorporating these special event revenues and expenditures in the operating budget that we're currently going through developing at this time. So the recommendation is that the council adopt the resolution approving the Community Services Department to act as the city sponsor for the 7 events and authorizing Director of Community Services to negotiate agreements with co-sponsors to assign rights and responsibilities of each party in the execution of these events as provided in the attachments. And I can take any questions.
Thank you, Terry. Do we have questions for?
I have a question. If we approve this as written, I believe that there's been some changes in the 7 organizations, or what we've approved. So should we make allowances that if it changes, if one of these groups, doesn't participate, or, chooses not to, and somebody else takes a place?
Let me address that, Terry, just quickly. So what is listed here as far as what I would call the co-sponsors for these events? Mm-hmm. These are not set in stone. These would be negotiated for each event, and that the agreement allows for that. For example, the ones that are listed here are the ones that have been there in the past. That's
okay,
what
so
that is.
They're just okay.
That's just to note who it was in the past. That's not who it is going forward necessarily. It could be, but it's not necessarily who it would be. The other point, just to add to, and this was brought up, and we will bring this back to you regarding the Wanderlust event. That is not happening. El Dorado Art and Wine has decided not to do that event anymore, is my understanding. However, in working with another group that runs Oktoberfest, they are interested in operating a similar function, similar location that would be called Blues, Brews, and Barbecue. And they are looking to do that in July rather than, this is noted in August for Wanderlust. I believe, is that right?
That's correct.
July.
Yeah.
That's correct.
So
and then there's a little bit of
we would bring back the event and the date to you to approve that formally, because that's not included in this staff report.
Correct.
Okay, that was my question, because I didn't know whether this was, that we were approving what we're approving with these mentioned here. So, okay.
Yeah.
And there might be others that might want to change, from time to time. So I'm thinking naming them. I hope that doesn't tie our hands.
Well, all you're approving tonight is the agreement.
Just the agreement.
Yeah.
Okay.
And so,
okay.
and the proposed budget, now that budget is just as it says, a budget, and who knows how that comes out. There will be differences that will arise.
Okay.
I do know that, just for your information, we do have a representative from Kilton Cork here tonight who's willing to answer questions. Kilton Cork is kind of the operator of both Oktoberfest and potentially, if approved, the Blues, Brews, and Barbecue. I'm never going to get that right.
3 Bs.
The 3 Bs, the Triple B program. How's that? So if you have questions regarding those 2 events, I'm hoping he can answer those for you. So,
follow-up question, Cleve.
Yes.
To what Patty was speaking to. So the council has previously approved of these 7 events. I believe we've given staff the discretion to, wiggle around the dates with the direction that we would prefer to see more earlier, if we can shift the car show up earlier or things like that to get it out of August, July, September as much as possible.
Or interference with Highway 50 traffic.
So these events have already been approved, and just to clarify, if there's going to be any major changes to the event, not necessarily the sponsor or the exact date, but the actual event, that would come back to council at another time.
Correct.
Okay.
Yes. If there's anything that's such as I mentioned, the new event, we will bring that back for your approval and make sure you're still okay with that.
Okay.
With that going on. And some of the dates I didn't mention also, for example, the Classic Car Show is now going to occur in June this year. So we did get it moved back a little bit early. I've talked to Terry about potentially trying to move it back into May next year if we can, and we're working on that.
Okay.
So.
Yeah, it's June 2nd for this year. And also the August event is being looked at for July as well to try to space things out.
Okay. All right, thank you. Are there any other questions?
Not really questions. I guess I just wanted to echo that we're approving these events, but I'd like to see it written in somewhere that, staff has the discretion to choose the co-sponsors. That'll, I think, prevent any things moving forward if they change from year to year. I don't want to see it coming back to council for that. So just that. And talked about the 501c3 or a partner with a 501c3. I was wondering if we wanted to give 501c3s a priority as co-sponsors. Or I guess we can still put that under the staff's discretion, but just things that I was thinking about.
Yeah, just a comment. And Terry, again, thank you for all the work on this. I know there's been a lot of time and thought that's gone into it, so thank you. My only comment was, and I know we talked about this as a council before, which is, at some point I'd love to see some things, and I know Wagon Train, Trick or Treat, Festival of Lights, Christmas Parade. I mean, those are Main Street events, but to the extent that we couldn't move around other events throughout other parts of the city, I think it's just great to highlight those parts of the city and not close down Main Street so much as well. I know we've already condensed it from what it was before, but it could do with even more condensing.
Right.
All right, I will see no other comments for Terry. I'm going to open this up to public comment at this time. If anyone would like to step up to the mic.
Sue Rodman again. I would really like to encourage us to get the ones that don't absolutely have to be on Main Street off of Main Street. I agree with Councilmember Zaragoza. There is the parking lot next to the theaters down on Placerville Drive has worked very well to do the farmers market. And that is a space that could very well do the car show and could probably do the 3Bs as well. And I'd like to see us get these things off of Main Street, especially during fire season. July, August, September, and even into June. We're still looking at, those are your high fire season danger areas now. Fire season is going into May and it's going into October and November, but the real prime time is that summer of July, August, September, and maybe the last half of June now.
Apple Hill.
So, but I think turning this into the Community Services Department to act as the person to ride herd on these things is a great idea. Thanks.
Thank you, Sue.
I don't know if you're aware, Maureen Dion Perry, Housing El Dorado. Housing El Dorado was one of the beneficiaries of the Oktoberfest from designation by Kilton Cork. So I think it's also an important recognition that many of the sponsors of events are not just keeping all the money themselves, but they are donating that to nonprofits, and we were a lucky beneficiary of that. And I can't imagine that the Oktoberfest could ever happen in the theater parking lot in the full glory that it is. So were you aware that we were a beneficiary? Okay. Thank you.
Thank you, Maureen.
You have a great staff, I'm sure you know that, and sing the praises of Terry Zeeler. Not only is he named the same as my wife, Terry, He's also very, very competent at what he's doing. I'm particularly impressed. My undergraduate work was public administration, even though I never really did it except to be a gadfly to city councils and stuff. But the way he's building in accountability and transparency so that the sponsors are aware of what's going on in terms of operational staff, as well as the control and the accounting mechanisms, and then really the best practice that there's a post-event meeting to review everything so that each year we can improve better and better. So those are all exemplars that I remember being drilled into me a long time ago. My specific suggestions are building on the comments that I heard from Councilmember Zaragoza and other people, is perhaps tweaking where it says special event Main Street, that it just says special event Greater Placerville or something. Because I am hearing ideas that working with Mr. Zeeler's department could potentially be a great event that highlights another part of the town. And so since you're making these transformations, we all have a tendency to kind of repeat what we've always done. And then so just opening it up so it's a little looser and not locked into Main Street, I think might add that benefit. My last comment has to do with the 501c3s. I understand the reason that your 501c6s, which is what the Placerville Downtown Association is, are also nonprofits, different sets of rules and stuff. I know the PDA is reconstituting itself and perhaps, again, just trying to open up options because you're now the sponsors and you'll be able to make the final decisions. But rather than ruling out the 501c6s and events in Upper Broadway and stuff, you might want to tweak those things. Thank you.
Thank you, Leo.
Hi, I'm John Zachary, and I'm the event manager of what Cleve was having problems with the Blues, Brews, and Barbecues. We've decided to change the name for you, Cleve.
Well, we narrowed it down to 3 Bs.
Well, we don't want people to confuse it with the Better Business Bureau.
There you go.
So about 2 years ago, Russ Reyes, who runs Kilton Cork, was going to put on an event, or maybe it was last year, it was going to be the Motherlode Beer and Music Fest. But he had already ordered the glasses for it. And so we have 2,000 glasses for beer that say Motherlode Beer and Music Fest. So we've decided maybe we'll go with what's named on the glasses and do Motherlode Beer and Music Fest. It'd be July 16th would be the event. And this is the one that's replacing Winderlust. And I went to Winderlust, and honestly, it was a lot of fun to go to an event on this side of Main Street. It was very different than I've been to the 1,000 things at the Bell Tower, and it was very different up here. It was really good. But if you guys have any questions for me as far as the events and so forth, I'd be happy to answer.
Thank you, John. After public comment, I'll have you come back up because I do have a question for you.
All right. Thank you.
Yep, thank you.
Kirk Smith. I'm not going to ask you to continue the matter because that's a lost cause, but I would ask you to give it a fresh look, particularly with reference to this business about 501(c), et cetera, et cetera. I think that there's been a lot of strong views expressed in the past. I appreciate, and sometimes it looks like the Family Feud when it comes to the Thomases and the Taylors, because a lot of comments are made from that side of the dais that we have no way of responding because it comes long after public comments. But I point out that the PDA has been since 1987 501(c)(36), and it's because they applied for the 501(c) and was denied because they were merchants. I think that you might be too narrow because you need to also look at places like the Chamber of Commerce. Do you know how their status? They're fixed with IRS. If they turn around and take money from the government and then turn around and make recommendations, endorsements, sounds political. So that would be a problem. And then the other thing I think that's most important to keep in mind is you've got a brand new PDA. Last month there was a new election. There was only one former board member who's now there. Brian Chase was voted off. So it's going to be a shakedown cruise, but it'll be new. For many years there was a thought that the PDA was really representing the city or other special interests and not merchants. So unfortunately, this last time, the last configuration, it was going the other direction. But they did follow the bylaws. When Dennis was first president, you look at the bylaws that are on the website, it says that you can't be a president unless you're already on the board, and that was passed. Nobody seemed to care enough at the time. So a lot of the perspectives you've gotten has been tainted or influenced by that kind of consideration. I think you'd be cutting yourselves off from doing really the right thing if you made it narrow. The other remarks I've overheard is about being sued. I'm not sure that that's correct, but why put yourself in a position where you're going to be having litigation? The First Amendment encompasses the right to petition your government for redress of grievances, which means filing suits. So that does, when you do something in retribution, that sounds like I like a piece of that one. So I really think you ought to change the business about the classification because it's much too narrow, and give yourself a chance to work with a new body that's trying to, in good faith, work towards a broader representation of the merchants on Main Street. Again, I think that a couple of years ago they went way overboard in the other direction, but that'd be a good reason to do it. It's just not principled.
Kirk, can you please wrap up?
Thank you.
Thank you very much. All right, seeing no other comments, I would like to invite John Zachary with Kilton Cork up for a couple of questions, or at least one. I just wanted to check in with you and make sure that you've reviewed the profit sharing. Basically, Kilton Cork, for those that don't know, is the event planner that does the profit generating events, or is proposing to do all of the profit generating events. So I just wanted to check in with you and make sure that you've reviewed the terms of the profit sharing agreement that's in this and that you're comfortable with them. And
yeah, I personally have reviewed them. As far as I know, Russ has reviewed them, and yeah, they're good.
Okay, thanks. Are there any other questions for John while he's up here? Do you want to add?
Not a question. I was just going to add, and I did speak to Russ specifically on that topic today, and he had reviewed and was comfortable with the proposal, how it's going forward.
Okay. All right. Great.
Cool. I have a question.
Yes.
I have a question, and it just goes back to what a statement I made earlier. I mean, do you see, and I understand, the Main Street, Upper Main Street, but do you envision, as you guys put these events on, that there would be another part of the city, maybe in the future that would also be a potential spot, or is it that, is Main Street basically the money maker for you guys in order to do one of these events?
Yes, we have looked at other places. We've looked at the fairgrounds. We've looked at where can you have it in El Dorado County that can bring people in. People know where it is. These events, as far as we're concerned, these are the right spots for it. Main Street is a great draw for people, and hopefully it brings people from out of town that haven't been to Main Street, and they get a chance to see what businesses are around and so forth. If the businesses are smart, they're open, Yeah, we have looked at other places.
And I understand it's cost prohibitive at the fairgrounds. I mean, that's always been a problem. Is it's expensive,
right?
But I was just thinking about different. So whether it's Placerville Drive or Broadway, even upper Maine.
Yeah. Yeah.
So not so much out of the city, but
Right.
other locations within the city.
And this is a great location. You can sort of enclose it, and it's really good.
Okay.
This part of Main Street.
Thank you.
So I'm just going to back Michael up on that. As you know, I beat the drum for other parts. I mean, we're so appreciative of our wonderful little downtown, but we also want to draw attention to the other two areas, which is Broadway and Placerville Drive.
Right.
So I agree with him, and that it would be just really nice. And I know the fairgrounds are on Placerville Drive, but there are other areas that might be considered that we could encourage folks to come to those areas. Is right?
Yeah, exactly. I mean, I know.
Yeah.
I think even one of your wagon
And-
train was at the Rite Aid, on Fair Lane, and
Yeah.
the after party.
Exactly. So anyway, that's
Yeah, I was part of the planning committee for the after party that was out in the parking lot next to the theater, and it was a great spot. But as soon as the wagon train got there, they wanted to go.
they all left.
They were ready. They wanted to go.
But
home.
and those are the things that have to be changed. I mean,
Right.
there has to be a different scenario. I feel
Right.
they needed to plan other things to encourage folks to stay.
Yeah.
So.
And part of that is the merchants.
I
actually, in
know,
those
Dennis.
areas, and
I
they
know.
and they at different times they have stepped up, and the whole town kind of ebbs and flows depending on where the focus is, and
Exactly.
and the activity
definitely.
of the merchant committees in the different areas.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I know.
And we'd be happy to look at other places, if there are suggestions for other places on Main Street or Upper Broadway or whatever. We want it to be fun, safe, and profitable.
Yeah.
All right.
All right?
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
All right. So I've got some questions for my colleagues on the council. There was some discussion in public comment about the 501c3 criteria. Well, actually, before I go there, one quick clarification, Terry, in the actual agreement.
Yes.
On the first paragraph after the second line, should that, in the parentheses, should that read 50, as the agreement is being presented right now, should that read 501c3 / business working with a 501c3, or is it intended to say business / business working with a 501c3?
Your correction would be the correct.
Okay. So with that, there's been some discussion that I think that we should have a 501c3 beneficiary, because the point of community events is to benefit our community, and the charitable organizations, they're the backbone of our community, and they provide a real benefit to not just the downtown, but all of the other areas in Placerville and El Dorado County and the community at large. So I do think that we should stick with the 501c3, but do you think that it's too restrictive to have it be the co-sponsor being required to be a 501c3 or business, or should that just be left more open to organization?
I thought there should be like not certified, that's not the right word, but a maybe certified nonprofit, because it does. I mean, if you just do 501c3, it leaves out the El Dorado County Chamber of Commerce, because they're a C6.
That's incorrect, I believe. I called and...
No, they're C6. They have to be in order to be able to, unless they have two different organizations.
They do.
They do.
They have
They
a
do.
PAC, and they also
They
have
a
the
PAC
chamber.
And they have the chamber, and the chamber is a 501c3, and the PAC is the C6.
As a membership organization, they're a C3?
Yep. Yes. So where I'm coming at from this is that there are, and it just, PDA is maybe one example, but there are a lot of examples of organizations that could bring their flavor into, one of the biggest challenges we have is kind of maintaining some neutrality and just having good city events and taking the political issues out of it. And when you start bringing in politically active nonprofits, then all of a sudden it turns it into more than what I want to see our events do. And I think that's an important thing to recognize. And you know, any one of these could have a political leaning, and it goes down a road that then all of a sudden it comes back to us, and we have to start trying to put our thumb on the scale and figure out what we like and what we don't like in terms of these politically active nonprofits. And so with that, it just seems there's a lot of really good 501c3 nonprofits out there that are not politically active, that really focus only on taking care of the citizens in this community. And I think that we have plenty of opportunities to support those.
I would just say, though, that even if the chamber does have a 501c3, that's great, but they are politically active. I mean, they're not a non-political player in our community.
So in terms of the co-sponsor, is the consensus of the council to leave it as either a business or a 501c3 charitable organization? Because that's how it is right now. It's a business or a 501c3.
I thought Terry said that you were correct. It should be a 501c3
or
business
or
working
a
with,
business working with
a
right.
501c3.
So the co-sponsor would be either a 501c3 or a business that is working with a 501c3.
Kilton Quirk is the perfect example.
Right,
They're not,
of a business
They're not a
working with a
501c3, but they're working with a 501c3.
Right.
Yeah.
And similarly, the Christmas parade, you know, I think that the idea is that the Hangtown Ice Cream Saloon would be the business working with Toys for Tots, the nonprofit.
I think there's a 501c3 that's been developed for the Christmas parade, Cleve was telling me.
Okay.
I believe there is.
That's correct, yeah.
Okay.
I think it's called Hangtown Christmas Parade LLC. It's a 501c3.
Okay. So just to clarify, we do want to keep it as either a 501c3 or a business working with a 501c3.
That's how I feel about it.
Okay.
Yeah.
And then this doesn't preclude the PDA from having PDA events. This is just for Main Street closures.
Yeah,
right. That's correct, right? So they can, girls' night out, there's a lot that they can do to promote downtown.
As long as they're approved, sure.
Yes, we have quite a few other events that are considered special events. They go through the event application process that don't close Main Street. So these are just focused on the ones that do.
Okay.
I have one thing that I would like you all to consider, and that is that when it comes to the profit, the sharing of the profit at 30%, that I think that should be a range rather than a set amount, because I believe that the organization that's running an event should have a little more flexibility in terms of how they are approaching this. And it can be negotiated with the nonprofit as they see fit. But I think a 15 to 30% range, rather than locking it in, would be, in my mind, an appropriate thing, because there's going to be days when you have a rain out and there's a lot of things that need to be covered. Now, you're talking about this is completely after all of the expenses, but sometimes that runs kind of tight, and sometimes a nonprofit hardly participates at all, and could participate more, and it'd give the opportunity for the co-sponsor to negotiate some of that work with them rather than just a flat fee. And it gives them an opportunity to work together on that. And it makes more sense from a putting on an event to be able to have some negotiation room with the nonprofits and have the opportunity for them to have levels of participation in working with the vendor.
And, Councilperson, if you look at under the agreement, the draft agreement, under B, we do have it just as stating that either be a nonprofit or partner with a nonprofit with proof of agreement to provide funding for the nonprofit from net proceeds. But we don't have a particular percentage in there. And the budget that was put together, the draft budget, was working under the assumptions that Kilton Cork currently has with the nonprofit that they're looking at. So I would agree with you that we wouldn't want to set that particular percentage of how internally the nonprofit benefits from proceeds with a business partner or proceeds that they themselves generate.
So that's completely within their purview to negotiate that price, or that the value of that sponsorship or participation.
That's the vein in which we are proceeding, yes.
Okay. That makes more sense.
I would add also, though, that that has to be approved by us still. They would submit that proposal, and, you know, we would have that opportunity to say that needs to be adjusted if necessary.
Well, it has to meet our costs, right? I mean, that's kind of another reason. That
Well, this is profit all after our costs have been, we're talking about the profit after all costs have been accounted for.
We're talking about the, you know, if a nonprofit just says, yeah, put my name on it, I don't care, we'll work with you and do some paperwork, and that's it. Where the nonprofit steps up and says, we're going to provide 30 volunteers, we're going to make this a huge event, and we're going to do something, really step it up, that has value. And so it's important for him to be able to negotiate that value. Because there might be a nonprofit that says, you know, if you want us to do it, fine. But another one steps and says, man, we're really excited, and they're going to bring people. It gives them room to negotiate instead of it's just a flat rate no matter what. But it sounds like it's already in there, so it's a non-issue.
Like it.
Yeah. I just saw it in your spreadsheet, and I kind of I locked in on that. So thank you.
So to clarify, the spreadsheet is a sample budget, really, and kind of what we're expecting for this year. But the policies that we're going to approve tonight are just what's written in this document. Is that okay?
So this is a situation where the spreadsheet doesn't drive the policy, but the policy drives the spreadsheet. Okay, thank you. Not that we've been there before.
I have one comment, Terry. We had discussed at length in a past council meeting about events the desire of the council to establish a limited public forum. And I didn't see, you know, in terms of the participants of the events and staff and volunteers, and I didn't see any reference to, you know, an agreement to abide by city policies or anything like that in here. And I was wondering if that's in the works, if that's if that is in here and I just missed it, or if we can get it added.
To answer your question, no, it is not in the draft agreement as written, but it is something that has been discussed and can be added if that is a direction that the council wants to go.
Okay, thank you.
And just to add to that, the nature of what the council is approving is in fact a limited public forum because we are limiting the type of activities and what's expected depending on what it is. For example, during the trick-or-treat, it's centered around, you know, youth and trick-or-treating and the holiday. And so we would be able to prohibit activities that don't align with that without running afoul of any First Amendment issues. Setting that aside, we can come up with a draft policy so that you can review it in advance and so that the entire public, applicants, participants know well in advance what's expected and what rules to abide by.
Okay, thank you. I do think that we need to have some policies in writing for these events.
Mayor, I was just going to add to that, and correct me if I'm wrong, Mona, is that limited public forum, if you want to call it that, but that event, each event may have different policies and guidelines that we will establish for those because they're all completely different. Right. So there's different things that we may want to look at for each event. So I think if you want to add something, we can come up with language under item B and add a letter H that would talk about the co-sponsor agrees to abide by event guidelines, regulations, rules established by the city of Placerville, something in regards to that language.
I think that would be really helpful, and that goes to what Dennis just spoke to, which is really trying to keep this as a community event. This isn't a political event. These aren't to make any type of statements outside of this is the wagon train or this is Christmas. You know, I mean, it's a confined messaging, so I think that's great.
We like beer.
Yeah.
We like wine.
Absolutely.
All right. Any other discussion on this, or? Would anyone like to make a motion?
Well, so did you want to, how do we do that?
I can take a stab at a motion.
What?
So.
Okay. To add the H?
Yes.
Okay.
Actually, maybe I can't take it. Maybe, oh, goodness. Okay, so I would make a motion that we approve the CSD to act as city sponsor for the 7 events, and that we authorize the Director of Community Services to negotiate the agreements with co-sponsors to assign rights and responsibilities of each party in the execution of these 7 events, as provided in the attachments, and with the addition of adding item H, that, or B.
BH.
BH.
B2H. B2H.
With the addition of referencing, the need to abide by city policies, with those policies forthcoming. Okay.
I'll second it.
Okay.
So, just a clarification. So we're going to have, so with all the different events and the different unique characteristics of the events and needs, are we going to bring back individual contracts for each event? Or are we just, are we going to allow them the flexibility to draft these contracts based on the fact that what you read is to follow all the rules and regulations and to negotiate these contracts with them? Is that more where we're headed?
Let me see if I can add. So,
you know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
Okay.
What we intend is that the Community Services Director, Terry Zeller, will have the authority to negotiate the agreement with the event, so not bringing that back to you. What we've talked about just most recently in terms of specific policies, rules, et cetera, for each event, I would think that we probably will want to bring those back to you for you to approve or to establish those policies.
All right.
That make sense? Is that okay?
Well, sometimes you got to build the ship as you're floating down the
True.
river.
True.
And so there's those adjustments that he needs to have latitude as well, and I just don't know where that begins and ends. But
yeah.
So okay.
Maybe like it says a post-event meeting to review is going to help solve a lot of things.
Yeah.
Because I would hate to think that everything we have that we're going to have a lengthy conversation about.
That's my concern too. And is there a way that we can give this city, because you guys draft up contracts all the time, and are they always exactly as? Do they come to us and they're exactly as we do? And but you have the authority, because this falls under your authority for dollar amounts and different things like that as well.
Yeah. So you've done it different ways. There's been times when we bring the exact contract to you. There's other times when you authorize us to develop and negotiate the contract. So there's been 2 different, kind of depends on what it is. So,
because I don't want the pigeonhole staff into this contract and he sees issues there and then it comes back.
Yeah. I'm more concerned about what we just discussed in terms of the limited public forum issue and restrictions or rules that we may want to place on that. There may be some issues that we want to get your approval on. But we can, for the most part, for much of it, I think we can take it between Terry and I. We can work together and we can make it go. But there may be some things we want to bring back to you and get your buy-in on it, just to make sure we're moving down the right road.
Okay.
So just to reiterate, this contract that we are approving, in the process of approving, it gives the staff the latitude to negotiate the terms of these events that have been approved, the 7 events. And the contracts do not need to come back to council, and they have a decent amount of discretion.
If the contract is as provided in the attachment, it would not have to come back to you. However, if you'd like to provide staff with additional discretion, you can alter the second enumeration in the resolution so that it then reads that authorize the Director of Community Services to negotiate agreements with co-sponsors to assign rights and responsibilities of each party in the execution of these 7 special events as provided in attachment B or in substantial form and execute the same. So as long as the contract is substantially similar to that which is provided in attachment B, then he can go ahead and approve it without bringing it back. If there's substantial modifications, we'd come back to the council.
Okay. That, I would appreciate you guys considering that, amending your motion.
I'm fine with that. Is everyone seem okay with that? Okay. So I would like to amend the motion to add under the first point or in substantial form and execute the same at the end.
Okay, thank you.
And I'll amend my second.
Okay. All right. So we have a first and a second. Roll call, please.
Councilmember No?
Aye.
Councilmember Thomas?
Aye.
Councilmember Borelli?
Aye.
Vice Mayor Zaragoza?
Aye.
Mayor Taylor?
Aye. Thank you, Regina. So moving on to 12.4. Oh, I'm sorry. We're going to take a 5-minute break. Oh. And we will be back at 7 o'clock. Thanks. We just got our consultant on the phone for this next item, item 12.4. This is about refinancing our wastewater bonds, and Mr. Warren has this report.
Thank you, Madam Mayor, members of the council. Good evening. In a nutshell tonight, what we're asking is for the City Council to authorize staff and your municipal advisor to solicit proposals from reputable lending institutions to refinance your 2006 wastewater revenue bonds with better terms, thereby reducing the cost of the financing on your ratepayers over the remaining 12 years of the financing. In order to do this, we need some additional assistance. There's an old saying, it takes money to make money. In this case, it takes money to save money. So that's what we're doing tonight. In order to solicit the proposals from reputable lending institutions, staff is requesting authority to negotiate a professional services agreement with Hilltop Securities for replacement agent services for a not to exceed amount of $24,000. And in order to legally bind the refinancing, staff is requesting authorization to negotiate a new professional services agreement with the city's existing bond counsel, Norton Rose Fulbright, for a not to exceed amount of $55,000. Staff is also recommending the council adopt a resolution retroactively approving and affirming, effective July 1st, 2021, the Measure H fund revenues are restricted to only repayment of the 2006 wastewater revenue bonds, associated refinancing, and the 2006 SRF loan debt and sewer capital improvement projects, which are accounted for in the city's sewer enterprise fund for the remaining term of Measure H, which sunsets March 31st of 2041. This resolution would memorialize the strategy the City Council took back in 2018 to avoid having to raise sewer rates by an additional 10% by transferring Measure H funds to the sewer enterprise fund for each year to ensure adequate debt coverage. Staff also recommends the council adopt a resolution establishing a restricted sewer enterprise fund debt service reserve in the amount of $1,528,631, approving a $1,248,631 budget appropriation from the sewer enterprise fund undesignated fund balance for the said reserve, and approving a $280,000 budget appropriation from the Measure H fund undesignated fund balance for the said reserve. At their meeting last night, the Measure HL committee recommended that the said $280,000 budget appropriation from the Measure H fund undesignated fund balance for the sewer enterprise fund sewer enterprise fund debt service reserve be made. These actions will help ensure the refinancing is the most attractive to prospective investors, and the city receives the best financing terms for the 2006 wastewater revenue bonds. Now I'd like to present the presentation prepared by your municipal advisor. Unfortunately, Anna Sarabian was unable to attend tonight's meeting in person because she's out of state. We did discuss deferring this item until such time when she could attend. However, because the market is changing rapidly, inflation is skyrocketing, and the recent Federal Reserve actions, we thought it would be important to present this item to you tonight and move forward. And Anna is on the speakerphone tonight, as you know, in case you have any questions for her. So we'll go ahead and get into the presentation. So as the city's municipal advisor, Fieldman Roll-Up and Associates was selected to assist the city with the contemplated refunding of the Placerville Fund Financing Authority revenue bonds or wastewater refinancing and improvement project, Series 2006. In coordination, staff, the following tasks were completed. They reviewed the related financing documents and discussed existing requirements and covenants with legal counsel. They calculated the debt service coverage and performed rating comparisons and analysis. They compared the preliminary public offering versus a private placement refunding. And a private placement is essentially going directly to a bank and seeking proposals from the bank or lending institution instead of issuing bonds. The 06 bonds were issued on parity lien to the 1997 state revolving fund, kind of like your mortgage, having the same position. And then the loan was and a senior lien to the 2006 SRF loan. So the bonds are actually currently senior to the 2006 SRF loan, which partially financed the improvements at the water reclamation facility. The 1997 SRF loan final payment was made in 2019, and based upon a provision in the 2006 SRF loan documents, the proposed refunding bonds would be on parity or subordinate to the 2006 SRF loan. So the position would lower from senior to parity unless both the following conditions are met. The non-subordinate debt is rated A or higher by at least 2 nationally recognized rating agencies. Revenues available to make payments on the 2006 SRF loan are at 1.1 times the current year's payment obligation, or 110%. Based upon discussions with legal counsel in the city, Fieldman performed the analysis of the refunding, and the projected to be in the refinancing would be in parity with the 2006 SRF loan. The debt service coverage using historical data, the city's audited financial statements, projections provided by the city. Fieldman examined the prior 5 years, projected 5 years of revenues and expenditures in the sewer fund. They estimated debt service coverage under multiple refunding scenarios. They performed rating analysis. Credit rating agencies examined certain characteristics to determine the debt obligations assigned rating, some of which include median household effective buying income, county poverty rate, debt service coverage, days cash on hand. After calculating these characteristics and comparing to the California average published by the S&P, the proposed refunding bonds were projected to fall into a A rating category based on Fieldman's analysis. The 2006 bonds outstanding par amount is $16.6 million, or the amount that's owed currently on principal. The final maturity is in 2034. The bonds are callable on any date at par. No underlying ratings, only insured ratings at the insurance, XL Capital, which is the current insurance company for the bonds. Fieldman examined different refunding scenarios per the direction of the city and compared public sale and private placement scenarios, assuming proportional savings. So they looked at both a public offering and a direct placement. And what they found, these are kind of a SWOT analysis or a comparison. So when you look at the public sale on the left compared to the private placement on the right, the credit rating with the public sale, we would have to spend some money to do that, and it's recommended. It's not recommended with the private placement, going directly to a bank. Credit approval, an underwriter would have to be selected and price negotiated and agree to an underwriter underwrite unsold balances. Essentially, with a private placement, bank credit approval is required and with a limited number of banks instead of multiple investors out in the bond market. The interest rate lock, a public sale at pricing, so when the bonds are issued, can take advantage of yield curve. With a private placement, generally up to 60 days after the bank's selection, we have one rate. The offering statement, continuing disclosure, we would be required to disclose. This would be something of we're doing currently. It takes us about a full day, maybe a little bit longer to prepare that report. That would no longer be required with a private placement. It would just be a limited scope, providing most likely our financial statements to the bank. The transaction timeline, in other words, how long would it take for us to actually effectuate the financing with a public sale would be 4 to 6 months. With a private placement, 2 to 3 months, which is very important right now with interest rates changing rapidly. Cost of issuance is generally higher with a public sale, and with a private placement, it's less expensive. So the applicability, you can see the comments there. The frequent issuers, longer term, larger size, with a private placement, non-rated issues, and frequent issuers, shorter term and smaller size, so less frequent financing. Call a provision, generally with a bond, it would be 10 years after the financing is issued. Par call, early call might be available at a premium if it was written into that document. The private placement could be negotiated within the agreement to either prepay or refinance. So, any questions so far? Yes, Mayor.
Go ahead. The call provision, is that us wanting to refinance it, or is that them calling the note and asking us to pay?
That's to refinance it. So if you say if terms improved and you wanted to refinance the bond again, say if you issued a public offering, another bond, then yeah. It would be approximately 10 years.
That's like a low or no prepayment penalty on a home loan type of thing.
Kind of.
Okay.
Yeah.
Dave, question on the interest rate lock. So for the public sale, you have that happens at pricing and you can take advantage of a yield curve. What do you mean by that? Because, I mean, when I think of the curve and interest rates, it's not looking beneficial to us, right?
Yeah, I think that's just a general comment that you're kind of playing in the market. You could reap good things or not so good things. So depending on right now, I've heard of issues where they've gone out to market and they haven't been able to sell all the bonds because the interest rates are going up. If you're an investor, you're thinking, well, I'm going to wait for a higher paying bond to invest in. So potentially.
And then in terms of the transaction timeline, so I mean, clearly doing this sooner, given the way interest rates are going, is beneficial. But it sounds like with the private placement, the interest rate is locked 60 days after we finalize the paperwork.
Correct.
So even with that 60 days, the private placement is still likely going to be a faster time frame than the public? Okay.
Yes. And our goal is, if you approve that tonight, we would, as early as the second meeting in April, come back to you with documents, proposals, and recommendations. Excuse me.
Okay.
Are you pricing some of the Fed rate hikes into this, or is a lot of times the market will pre-price money into the market before it actually hits? Is that something that we could expect with this as well?
It's I know Anna tried to include the best assumptions possible considering where we are, but it is somewhat stale because things are changing so rapidly. So we won't know until we go out. with the banks, I'm hoping that we can still leverage a pretty good rate. And we'll talk more about the amortization schedule. The numbers we're presenting tonight is really just kind of the low bar of what we could save. And we have some ideas for you. So.
Okay, these rates are as of 3.9. Is that? I kind of jumped ahead, but I'm guessing that's what it is. So I'll let you go because I think that's coming up. Thanks.
Okay. Thank you. So yeah, here is just and this, what Anna did is she looked at the way the amortization schedule is set up. You might have noticed there's balloon payments toward the end of the financing, which we don't like, because the way we pay for this primarily is through rates, and we don't want to have to raise our rates significantly towards the end of the finance. We'd like to kind of smooth that. But to show you apples and apples, the financing today versus if we did a public sale versus a private placement, what that would look like. So the public sale would be insured by a surety bond, so there's an additional cost for that. The closing date's estimated to be July 13th, 2000 this year. The par amount, so the current principal amount owing is $16.6 million. The refunding amount, the new principal would be $13.8. And you ask yourself, well, how'd you get there? Well, we're currently sitting on about $1.7 million in debt service reserve specifically for the bonds. And so we have that plus the underwriter's discount. And so that's how you get down to the 13.8. The interest rate, as Councilmember Thomas indicated, 2.4. And again, that's based on when this analysis was prepared not too long ago. The gross debt service, not taking into account net present value calculation, is $5.6 million. But when you do take into account, as you should, the net present value savings would be approximately $3 million. So the savings would represent about an 18.13%, on average per year, $434. Then you look at the private placement. The closing date we're estimating is around the middle of May 17th. The refunding par would be $15.2 million. And in both these scenarios, we also have what we call issuance costs. So bond counsel, with the direct placement, we have the placement agent costs, so on and so forth. The interest rate, we're anticipating roughly 2.18% based on when the analysis was performed. The total gross debt service savings, $6.2 million. And then 3.5 on your net present value. So when you look at it from a net present value, the current amortization schedule, the way it's laid out, it's about $500,000 more in aggregate savings. So, or 21.12%, or $479 on average per year. This is kind of what it would look like as far as the debt service, and you can see in the early years, the payments are minimal, and then when you get to 2029, it seems so far away, but it'll be here before we know it, the payments jump up. Well, we're trying to avoid that, but we wanted to show you, based on the way the bonds are set up, the way the amortization schedule, what a direct placement would look like and what a public offering would look like. So here we show you the blue line above is the current bond, what the debt service would be. And then the green is our private placement, the green bar, and then the gray bar is another public offering. So, but what Ann and I spoke about is to, when we go out to market, to actually look at a 5 to 10 year step up. What that means is each year we would pick up more of the principal to eat away at that, which would then create even more interest savings. And that's something that we'll be looking at and then have recommendations for you when we come back.
Can I ask a question?
Yeah.
Do we have this current step up in our current loan?
Not in your bond, no.
Then, okay.
No, that's literally the blue line you see there. That is the debt service. The blue line on the top.
That's
That's the amortization schedule, the way it is set up right now.
Okay, that's our current debt service.
That's correct.
Okay, so that step up is there. Why is there such a big step up? Is that a requirement, or is that we agreed on that? Did we go, well, we'll figure it out when 2029 comes along?
That's a great question. So it was considering, the 1997 SRF loan being paid off, the city's ability to raise rates to that level, and the market. Part of it was just being able to sell the bonds at that time. And just so you know, the bond rates, right, or the yield right now is between 4% and 5% on your current bond.
Okay.
Along those lines, Dave, I mean, that's a big step. So if we stuck with the current bond repayment schedule, what would we have to do to be able to afford that payment in 2029? Like increase rates by threefold, or not do capital improvement projects for 5 years?
Yeah, if you were to stick with that, I mean, my recommendation would not to stick with that. But if you were, you say, I just want to stick with that, I would say, well, you still need to incrementally raise your rates and monitor Measure H, sales tax, to get to that ultimate payment, if you will, in 2019 or 29, excuse me. Either way, we would need to raise rates. But if you were to defer that, you can see that, that 1 year you would have to raise rates significantly, which I would not recommend doing. We've been down that road. It's not a good road to go down.
The 1 million we have in reserve for this bond, that's not our reserve.
It's restricted to the bond, so it's held by the trustee.
So we put 1.7 million away, and it's sitting out there. It's our money, but it's in reserve to protect the bond.
Yeah, the only way you can touch that money is if you needed it for debt service, if you were basically to default on a payment, and we've never done that.
And could we use that for the last several payments?
So what we would do is, what we've assumed is that we would roll that cash into the refinancing.
Okay.
So we would buy down the existing debt by $1.7 million, and then refinance the remaining balance.
Based on our A rating, we wouldn't have to have a reserve account like that then? Well, is it the A rating, or is it just the way we're doing it now?
It's an estimate. That wasn't an official rating. It was a rating calculated by Fieldman based on the statistics that rating agencies use. But it's not an actual, it's just if we were to go out, what would it be? What we think it would be.
But we're pretty comfortable rolling the 1.7 into this as well?
Yes, absolutely. Okay. Now, part of the action tonight is to establish a restricted sewer enterprise fund debt service reserve of $1.5 million. So that money would be there in case the city ever needed it to make either the SRF loan payment or the private placement payment.
And that's just a good practice that we're doing that?
Absolutely.
Or there's no requirement for that?
Yeah. Okay. Plus, it makes the financing more attractive to banks to invest.
So, Dave, am I understanding you correctly that we currently have over $1 million sitting in reserve for our current?
Correct, 1.2.
1.2.
That we
and
can
we would
freeze.
roll that into this loan to bring our payments down, and then we would reestablish another 1.5 reserve.
So you have $1.7 million that's restricted with the trustee as part of the bonds. It came from the bond proceeds when we issued the bonds in 2006, and it's just been parked there earning interest. As a matter of fact, each year when we make a payment, the interest that's earned on that balance it reduces our debt service. But in addition, so what we're proposing is that we would use that reserve when what we call defease the bonds or refund the bonds to pay down part of the bonds. So the difference, what you would refinance, is $1.7 million less. You're going to have some cost for cost of issuance, like your bond counsel, your placement agent, so on and so forth. It's going to be about $150,000 approximately to do it. And then we would have this $1.5 million in the sewer enterprise fund as a debt service reserve.
Okay, and we had that money. I'm assuming, since you're proposing this, that we have that money in the sewer enterprise fund.
We
now.
have 1.2 that we can do, but we're asking $280,000 be appropriated from Measure H fund to supplement that reserve.
Okay. Thank you.
Thank you.
So if our reserves for Measure H in Measure H are being depleted to fund this restricted reserves for the bond, we're reducing our abilities within the Measure H funding, and we'll have to build that back up.
Actually, based on my forecast, you'll be able to fully fund your construction reserve. You'll have your $80,000 operating reserve, and you will be able to fund all your projects by the end of the year that you've already appropriated. So this 280 at the mid-year budget, we talked about how well our sales tax is doing. This $280,000 will come from net proceeds from those unanticipated Measure H sales tax revenues.
Okay, so I get that there's a lot of money moving around here. We got the 1.7 million that we're rolling into the loan to reduce the debt service. We're pulling 1.2 out of Measure H and putting it into reserves along with
280,000.
Where's the 1.2 coming from?
It's already in the sewer enterprise fund.
Okay.
We're just asking you to restrict it for the reserve.
Okay, so we have to. What I'm trying to wrap my head around is, we're dealing with public money, people's money, the people of the city. It's their money. How do I tell them this is a good deal? Because the Measure H money is sales tax dollars that they have committed to projects or to this, and it also goes to offset our cost of sewer rates and those types of things. Am I getting the right one? Okay. So we have to make the argument that taking this money out of the projects and putting it in there, taking it out of the potential for projects and that pot of money that's fixing things to keep our debt down, and in the long term it's going to save $500,000. With 3.5, 400,000
and that's a low estimate.
That was 300,000, 400,000 a year,
based
or
on
something like that. Yeah,
amortization schedule we're looking at.
Yeah, present value. So that's the sell, and that's why I should feel good about taking that money out of the Measure H fund, putting it towards that, along with the 1.2 million that's already restricted in our enterprise fund. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
Okay. Thank you.
Thank you.
Dennis, I think that, in terms of how to explain it to the public, you can show them this curve and say that that's what rates are going to increase. This is what you're paying now. This is what you're going to have to pay if we don't make this change.
But the two little lines underneath there are saying the same thing, but just not quite as much.
Well, but it's not actually going to do that because they're going to come back and even these out. So it's
this one right here, I think, is the most powerful. When you see the net present value savings, regardless of whether we do a public sale or a private placement financing, on a net present value basis, you're going to save over the next 12 years between $3 million and $3.5 million, which, to your point, would free up sewer enterprise fund funds. It would help minimize the impact of future rate increases, or it could be used for projects.
Yeah. So I ran the risk of looking like a little bit like a fool trying to explain this to you so that I could understand it, so that if somebody else asked me why are we doing this and why are we taking that money out, I might be able to have some confidence and explain to them why we're taking the money out of the sewer, for shifting from sewer enterprise fund and also from our Measure H funds, because those Measure H funds, H and L, there's a lot of emotions wrapped up in that money. And there's a lot of things that people are really concerned about.
But I believe, because I remember Measure H, and that was to help deal with the debt service. So I don't really feel like we're reshuffling this or misappropriating this.
It's
We're
not
doing exactly
misappropriating.
what it was meant for.
I'm not saying anybody's doing anything wrong.
Okay.
I'm saying I need to be able to explain it.
Okay.
And I want to understand it if I'm going to vote on it.
And if you got this clear, God bless you. But I need to understand it a little better. So I just want to make sure I'm clear on where the money's going.
I think also, I don't know about anybody else, but I'm banking on future revenue coming in much better, higher sales, just sales tax, just from what we just saw, the reports that we got. I think it's going to increase, quite frankly. And
well, Patty, I love your optimism. I hope you're right.
I told you just need to go down and stand in front of Home Depot. No, I'm kidding.
Good. Dave, let me ask you this. Am I understanding this correct too? Because I've been coming along with you here as we go too. We're asking for $280,000 one-time transfer into that reserve.
That's correct.
In exchange, we're getting $479,000 a year in annual savings.
That is correct too.
Okay.
Where are those savings realized?
The savings is realized in your payment on the debt each year. So based on Fieldman's analysis, we're saying that we're going to spend in a private placement, it's an estimate, $479,000 less in interest. We still have to pay the principal back.
Right. We're still paying at the same rate that our original bond was.
No.
That's
No,
what
we're
savings-
actually going from 4 to 5% interest rate to
Not
2.18.
that rate. We're still paying making the same payment, dollar amount as our original bond?
No.
No.
No, it would reduce. What this is, we call this the proportional amortization schedule. So they took where you can see the top blue line, and we tried to come up with a proportional debt service schedule with either a bond or a direct placement. In no way are we recommending that we go with that type of amortization. But in order to show you apples and apples, where are we today? Where would we be with a private placement versus a public offering?
I'm going to throw Cleve on their bus because I thought that's what he told me. But we were talking a lot about different things, so I thought that it doesn't matter what I think. So I get what you're saying. So where's that going to be? Are we going to have less payments coming out of our sewer enterprise fund?
Absolutely.
And so our sewer enterprise fund should, well, I don't know if it's going to grow or not shrink as fast, or how that works in terms of the money in there.
You see the cost going up.
Mm-hmm.
What it means is, that you're going to be able to minimize your rate increases going forward by doing this.
Thank you.
And here's my commitment to you. If there's a way to free up the $280,000 within the sewer enterprise fund, and that's possible in the next few years, to put that towards projects, I would support that if we can afford it.
Dave, I'm going to also show my ignorance and show why I'm a philosophy major and not a math major. So I just want to go back, and this is kind of going off what Dennis had mentioned earlier. So I get all the funds moving around and rolling the funds, the current funds reserve into the new loan, or the new placement.
Right.
But to me, are we still like $1 million short somewhere in terms of reserves? I mean, how do we build up, where does that extra reserves come from now? Because I feel like even if we're moving it around, there's still a net loss somewhere in terms of reserves. The 1.2 million.
Well, what we're saying is you have $1.2 million in your sewer enterprise fund that we're asking you to freeze as a restricted reserve. The only time we could use that money is if we needed to make a payment from that reserve from either your SRF loan, your 2006 SRF loan, or this new financing. In addition to that, to come up with a total of $1.5 million, we need to appropriate money from the Measure H fund to supplement that. The money's in the money's in the sewer enterprise fund. The problem is you need money to operate your fund.
Mm-hmm.
You need liquidity to operate
Right.
every day-to-day run the WRF and public works, so on and so forth. So we don't want to restrict too much. So that's why we're wanting to supplement $280,000 from Measure H.
And I guess that was, I was always going to ask was, if we do freeze that money, we're not then restricting ourselves. I mean, we won't have access to those dollars anymore. I mean, we don't need those for some other unforeseen circumstances.
Not at this time, no.
Okay.
How much?
Knock on wood.
Right.
Things happen, but for right now, no, not to my knowledge.
Okay.
What does it take to break a restricted? if say, something horrible happened?
Well, you have a covenant within your 2006 SRF loan that says you're supposed to have this. So we're late in establishing this, but contractually you're supposed to have it. So I would defer to Mona, our city attorney, that we would have to negotiate with the state to change that in order to do it right.
I think were you asking what emergency situation might arise where we could actually use that if we had to? And that would be that for some reason that,
Well, because
rates
the
had
word-
collapsed or whatever.
Well, the word restricted is in there, and
Right.
that's what
Right.
restricted is that you can't touch it, right? And
I think
so-
it's kind of, correct me if I'm wrong, Dave, if we had a problem 1 month or 1 year, something happened, catastrophic, whatever, that we didn't get our normal sewer revenues, at least we have that 1 year's worth in there to make that payment.
That's exactly it. So if you had a project that you had to build and you had to utilize other funds within your sewer enterprise fund that you would normally use to make the payment, you could use this reserve to help make that payment instead.
Okay. So just to make sure that I'm understanding it correctly, we're gonna tuck away 1.5 million
Correct.
from our sewer enterprise fund for the duration of this bond. At the end of the bond, we'll get that money back. So it's not. Correct.
It'll sit in your sewer enterprise fund.
Yeah, so it will become accessible again for
That's correct.
capital improvement projects. So it's not, it's not, we're not, it's not gone. And in return for 1.5 million to set aside basically in a savings account, we're going to save almost $500,000 a year in payments.
Just
So
that-
within 3 years. it
I
would
mean,
cover-
the savings, where that's coming from is the fact that you're refinancing the debt. The reserve is really just a way to, well, first of all, we're staying within our SRF loan contract. That's primary. Number two is you're making your financing more attractive to banks to lend to us.
Okay.
How much is in our sewer enterprise fund right now, approximately?
As far as cash? I don't have an exact dollar amount, but I would say right now, about $1.6 million.
Okay. So we still have operating money and,
Yes.
money. Thank you.
All right, so kind of jumping back in the presentation, great questions, by the way. Both refunding alternatives are projected to result in debt service savings, as you saw. Which options you choose depends on the city's overall strategic objectives and policies, relationship with the 2006 SRF loan, timing and complexity, revenue pledge, credit profile, market conditions, interest rate, risk, and projected savings potential. So that is the presentation from your financial advisor. My recommendation to you as your finance director is to allow us to pursue, based on the net present value savings, the direct placement. If we can expedite that quicker, we'll most likely get a better overall financing for you that'll save the city more money. And I did have a disclaimer here, and I won't read it, but I'll let you read it because she's so thorough. So anyway, so tonight we're asking, there's 3 resolutions that we're asking you to approve tonight. If you do approve those, we will continue working with our municipal advisor to explore alternative amortization schedules, including the 5-year and 10-year step-up options to increase principal payments in the early years and achieve even greater interest savings. The cost of issuance, including the $24,000 placement agent agreement with Hilltop Securities and the not to exceed $55,000 bond counsel agreement with Norton Rose Philbright, will be reimbursed from the proceeds of the financing. And if approved, we hope to return to the City Council on April 26th with proposals and recommendations. So with that, I'd be happy to answer any questions. We do have Anna on the line if you have any questions for her.
Thank you, Dave, for that thorough staff report. Any questions, other other than what we've already asked? All right, seeing none, let's open it up to our members of the public.
Sue Rodman, member of the Measure H, Measure L committee. And Jackie is correct. I worked on Measure H when it first came to being, and was originally passed by the city of Placerville to allocate funds to water, sewer, and debt reduction. And the debt reduction was specifically to keep us from having to raise sewer rates astronomically. As time went on, the reserves that were already built up were exhausted, and it became clear that our sewer system was in worse shape than we knew when we first passed Measure H. And so costs to fix that sewer system became more known, and the Measure H and L committee recommendation was to use Measure H entirely for the sewer system and the debt reduction, and cover all the water projects under Measure L, because by then we had Measure L. So about 2017 or so, we recommended that we take the Measure H money and use it for debt reduction and sewer projects. To me, this is like refinancing your house when the rates went down, and I could take my house and take it down to El Dorado Savings and say, hey, what can you do for me? And right now I'm paying almost 5%. Can you get me? And they said, yeah, we can do you 2.775. And so that allowed me to go from a 30-year mortgage to a 15-year mortgage without too much increase in my monthly payments. And so that's what I did, and I think this is similar. We're going to take our high interest rate bonds and refinance them to get a better rate, which will save us money. And when we save interest costs, then that means we have money to do more projects. So that's my input, and the Measure H&L committee did meet last night and went over this. Dave went through it with us, and we said, sounds like a good plan.
Thank you, Sue. All right, I will close public comment and bring it back to the council for a motion or more discussion.
I'd be willing to make a motion. Unless you guys want to talk some more.
I'm talking.
Are you talked out, Jeff? Sue, we have 3 separate motions?
I would actually do each one of them separately and read the specific language because it's a bonding issue.
Oh, one is making it hard for you.
Sorry.
That's okay. Well, I'll make the first motion that we adopt a resolution. Can I just say A, B, and C instead of reading all 3 of those?
Yes, that's fine.
Okay.
I'll second that motion.
All right, first and second.
Councilmember Borelli?
Aye.
Councilmember No?
Aye.
Councilmember Thomas?
Aye.
Vice Mayor Zaragoza?
Aye.
Mayor Taylor?
Aye.
Okay, I'll move number 2, adopting a resolution retroactively approving and affirming. Okay, good. Effective July 1, 2021, the Measure H fund revenues are restricted to only the repayment of the wastewater refunding and improvement project revenue bond series 2006 and associated refinancing of the 2006 SRF loan debt and sewer capital improvement project, which are accounted for in the city's sewer enterprise fund for the remaining terms of Measure H, which sunsets March 31, 2041.
I'll second that motion.
That's a long way. Sorry.
Councilmember Borelli?
Aye.
Councilmember No?
Aye.
Councilmember Thomas?
Aye.
Vice Mayor Zaragoza?
Aye.
Mayor Taylor?
Aye.
Anybody?
All right, I'll do the next resolution. So I will recommend we adopt a resolution to establish a a restricted sewer enterprise fund debt service reserve in the amount of $1,528,631. Approve a $1,248,631 budget appropriation from the sewer enterprise fund undesignated fund balance for the said reserve. And last, approve a $208,000 budget appropriation from the Measure H fund undesignated fund balance for the said reserve.
I'll second the motion.
A quick question before we'll call. How much does that leave in the Measure H fund, approximately, if we move that 280?
I don't have an exact, I have an exact dollar amount for you, but not on the top of my head. But we actually, the 2021 projects were fully funded. Your construction reserve last year was fully funded, and your operating reserve. As of, this was actually our September report, so it's stale, but we're about, as of December 31st, you funded about half of your projects. We actually anticipate having, and that's why we're recommending the appropriation, having excess revenues this year from what you've already appropriated. So,
All right, just wanted some clarity on that one piece. Thank you.
All right. So we need a roll call for that.
Councilmember Thomas?
Aye.
Councilmember No?
Aye.
Councilmember Borelli?
Aye.
Vice Mayor Zaragoza?
Aye.
Mayor Taylor?
Aye.
Just for clarification, Dave, when did you say you have it and you'll bring it back to us? April what?
April 26th,
26th?
the second meeting. That's the earliest, but that's our goal,
Okay.
because we want to get going.
I never did get the final on that. I didn't, okay, all right.
Thank you very much.
Write that in my book.
So we didn't hear from her, but we did have Anna on the line. Thank you, Anna.
Thank you, Anna, for being here.
Thank you.
All right. Next up is council reports from other agency
Thank you.
meetings. El Dorado County Transit Authority.
We haven't met since the last meeting.
El Dorado County Transportation Commission. We haven't
had a meeting. Sorry.
LAFCO.
The meeting's tomorrow, but it's also been canceled, so there won't be a report next month.
And I met with the budget committee. So we.
Okay. SACOG.
We had a couple of workshops, but the main thing, I guess, we signed a 5-year MOU with staff, so that was a kind of a big hurdle out of the way.
Pioneer.
All right, we went through quite a bit of things, but really what it came, well, the highlight is that they gave a state of the utility presentation, and they talked about our budget and how we're doing. And the one thing that I could bring back is that their focus is on customer satisfaction, on keeping our rates down, on recognizing and educating our community for the value that they bring to it, because they do bring value to a very high percentage of everybody in our community. They bring a value which is a reduction by a percentage for everybody. They're working really hard to negotiate power payment transactions. I'm just starting to learn the power industry. It's a whole nother, when I went into fire, they had a whole list of all their acronyms, and there are a lot. And then when I came into city, Rebecca gave me about a 5-page sheet of all the acronyms that she deals with. And then when I go into energy, it's a whole new set of acronyms. And it's another 4 or 5 pages. So there's certainly, you probably know a little bit about this.
You are forgiven.
Yes, there's a certain learning curve about this. But, their foundation is governance, self-reliant, having good financial rates, and finding it's a very well-run operation. Different programs, a Green 100, fire relief in different areas. This particular is the river fire. Partnering with PG&E to mitigate PSPSs. They work very hard on our behalf to do that, even before we were in with them. And pivoting the mid-year to bring in El Dorado and Placerville, and really looking long-term for
buying power, finding good programs for buying power, and trying to, honor the communities that serve by, looking for locally. They're also working on bringing up, what is those generation, where they're making electricity by burning fuels and biomass fuel. They're working on a program for a biomass generation, and so that's going to be coming on board, I think, sometime later this year. So they've got a lot of things going on. It's a very interesting board to sit on, and so that's all I can bring for you right now. But I know that they're working hard on our behalf. We have an acceptance rate right around 89%, or what they call a take rate, which their goal is 92%. So they got some education to go still. There's still opportunities for people who could realize the savings to still call up and get it switched over. That's still a thing. So I would encourage people, if you're listening, all three of you, to if you haven't already, to look at doing that. And I would encourage. We have to find a way to work with them to get this out to people, because it's worth looking at, because the savings opportunities are there for most people. It's not for everybody, but for most people. Solar kind of throws a curveball in there with it, but for most people, you're going to see in that 6% range of savings in your electricity bill. So,
did any of you listen? Did you listen to the program that PG&E and they presented the other night?
No.
About saving about.
No, I did.
You did?
I did.
Oh.
Okay.
I did. I still don't understand. I do and I don't. I just, I don't know.
All right, that's the end of my report. Thank you.
Thanks, Dennis. I'm glad you're enjoying that board.
Okay.
Fire Safe Council.
Well, we had our event Saturday, and gosh, it was really hard to say, why is it raining on this day when we've all been praying for rain? And here we have our one big event where we need, don't need the rain, but we survived, and I think overall it was a success. I was very pleased. I think the group just did a great job of organization, and I'm just so appreciative, as are they, for everyone that participated. Like Jackie mentioned earlier, that there were so many groups represented and so much information that I don't think anybody went away wanting to know anything. I knew about most of them, but the one thing that I did not know, that we have a fire academy here, and they are training young folks to become firemen. I did not know that existed, and I was really impressed with the fellow that talked about it. And maybe, Tim, you can tell us more about it if need be, but it certainly sounds like, because I keep seeing the need for firefighters, and there's a great need, and it sounds like these folks are trying to help fulfill that gap that we have. I wish that more people would have attended. However, it seemed to be a pretty steady flow that came in. And so I just really want to read an email that David Zelensky, who's president or chair of our Fire Safe Council, received from CAL FIRE. It kind of explains their feelings. It says, "Thank you for the invitation. The event was one of the best organized events I have attended and appeared to run very smoothly. Despite the gloomy weather, the event was well received. More is not always best. There was a steady flow of people, which is ideal for education. A lot of informal exchanges were able to take place. When a person has time to comprehend information, they feel confident to share. This event was a great launching pad for subsequent public education forums. We had a great time. Thanks, Diana Swart, CAL FIRE, El Dorado, Amador unit." So I think that was kind of the overall feeling of everybody that participated. So, and my thanks again to everyone. It was great. Tim, you can put in your 2 cents. So you were there. Everybody we were well represented.
Yes, thank you, Councilmember Borelli. It was very well attended. We had a lot of good interaction with the public, and it was a bit two-pronged, I guess, because we didn't want the rain, but we all know we need the rain. So, but it was very well received, and we did have some good conversations. And on the Fire Academy, I did have an opportunity to speak with that gentleman as well. And he's got some lofty ambitions that would really be beneficial to the community. And I think right now his goal is to provide that conduit for folks to get their foot in the door in the fire service. Most of the training they're doing right now is towards the wildland aspect and getting them essentially ready for like a Type 2 hand crew. So, but his end goal is get to a full Firefighter 1 Academy, which would make those individuals qualified for municipal fire departments such as ourselves.
And if
So it's a great
somebody's
program.
interested, how do they go about contacting this group? I did not.
He had a QR code. You shoot it on your phone, and it.
I'm sorry?
He had a QR code on his
I didn't.
on his banner, and it's technology. I'd have to ask my kids exactly how to do it, but there's something with your phone, and it takes you right to it. So,
Okay.
good information.
Thank you.
All right. I actually really liked the rain. It wasn't. A couple of sprinkles.
Yeah, I really
that
wish
made
I
me
wish
happy.
we'd had more.
The 2x2 did not meet, and Opportunity Knocks.
The first.
Okay. Requests for future agenda items? Any? None? Okay. City manager and staff report. Mr. Zeller.
Just once again, just wanted to give the council and the public an update. There is a film production company that is using 2 locations in Placerville to shoot scenes for a feature-length movie. They have been up in Pollock Pines for the last couple of weeks, and now they are migrating down to Placerville. So the 2 areas are in front of the former Intercounty Title Building, which they have leased, and that's at 596 Main Street, and the Pearson Soda Works building also, they have rented that one at 594 Main Street. So they're both near the Main and Cedar Ravine intersection for those of you that aren't good with the addresses. They're also going to be using the Ivy lot for 2 scenes. So all these scenes are going to be shot at night, mostly between 9 p.m. and 7 a.m., including 2 vehicle impacts that are going to cause noise and flashes from pyrotechnics. Police and fire have both been involved in reviewing the scenes for safety, including a pretty long on-site meeting and discussion we had the Friday before last. And there will be units on standby in case anything deviates from the plan. All the homes and businesses within a 300-foot radius of the impacts have been sent a mailer describing the events along with approximate times. And this is an attempt to reduce or eliminate unnecessary 911 calls. These impacts are going to happen on 2 nights. It'll be this Thursday around 10:30, and then on April 6th, approximately the same time. The production company has safety personnel in addition to our local public safety officers that will be on call or at the scene. And I can take any questions that I am allowed to discuss at this time.
Is there a specific time when they're going to do all this stuff?
10:30 Thursday, and
set off the fireworks.
Around 10:30 is when the. So
I could go down there.
Can we come and spectate?
Can we go down and look at it?
Just as long as we don't have to haul you away and restrain you. No, I'm sure there's going to be a perimeter set up. That's part of the plan. So it's, yeah.
So a wee bit of history. A long time ago, there was a film that was done here in Placerville. It was called In Enemy Country. It was filmed mostly at the Georgetown Airport. And I had the privilege of being, then we called me a secretary for that. And so I was able to go up and witness some of these, things that, because they were shooting airplanes out of the sky. And it was so interesting. I mean, it was just some of the time, we see these movies and we don't realize how they're done. And it's so, if we can go down and witness some of this, I would love to go see some of that again.
And Terry, what's the name of the movie?
Bloody Sunday Monday?
Bloody Christmas.
Christmas, Bloody Christmas.
Yeah. Christmas, Bloody Christmas.
We call it CBC.
So is this a horror movie or yeah?
It's a romantic comedy.
Oh my gosh.
All right.
After what we put on to display Christmas.
Okay. Any questions on this? No? Okay.
Oh, that's funny.
All right. Thank you for that update. That sounds exciting. Upcoming items, a couple things tentatively scheduled for the next meeting, a marketing presentation. Kirk Smith, you have an appeal to the Planning Commission, or appeal of the Planning Commission decision. A Measure J report, workers' compensation trending report, Hangtown Creek culvert, and parking lot restoration, and police and fire monthly stats.
Just real quick on the appeal, is that the one that Councilmember Thomas is already appealing? Is it a different one? Okay, gotcha.
Okay. So with that, I will adjourn this meeting at 8:03. Thank you.
Thank you. Awesome.